Hello, everyone. Welcome to an installment of Debate Reviews. I need a cool
Mhm.
name like you have, Mark. We've been doing this for
Oh,
over
um,
2 years, and you have debate dissection, and I'm
I
still.
know. Okay.
We're
Yeah, but you
it's a
didn't want to
debate review.
use that. You didn't want to use that. So, debate-a-thon, um, debate inundation. Uh, uh, um, let's see.
I want to say redacted, but the old Reddit streams I used to do were called that.
Redacted. Okay. Um. All right. All
I
right.
don't know.
Red, red,
I'm very silly.
redacted debate review. I don't know. Redacted debate review. That's doesn't grab me, but I'll work on it. Let's
I
workshop
know.
this.
We'll send it back to the drawing board, and
Right.
maybe by the 5-year mark I'll have something. But for today, it is debate reviews.
Bespoke reviews.
Ooh,
Bespoke debate reviews.
yeah,
Isn't there a technical word for hats?
like a haberdasher.
Charcuterie? Oh, haberdashery debate reviews.
Hmm.
Look, we're going to work on it, people. Don't worry. We'll come up with something timeless yet elegant.
Probably.
Yeah. Either that or we'll just grab a name and throw it on there and, just basically go good enough.
We could call it Ruth's Chris's Steakhouse Debate Reviews.
Yeah, nice. That grabs me.
Absolutely. All right, so we do have a fresh one today. This is John Lennox, the famed mathematician. And
Ugh.
just something about mathematicians talking outside their field. I don't know, but
Yeah, mathematicians and mechanical engineers.
mm, that's the whole thing. So for those not familiar, John Lennox isn't just a mediocre apologist who has Oxford tenure. He's a professor emeritus at Oxford as a mathematician, and he uses that to wedge himself upward on platforms for
Mm,
apologetics reasons, even though honestly capturing Christianity and that tier of apologists do a much better job than he does. But that's just my
yes.
personal opinion. Make your own conclusions. He is, however, an ally of the Discovery Institute, which
Hmm.
means he is a creationist in addition to an apologist. And that makes things even more interesting.
Yeah. He's kind of the guy that says, "Oh, mathematically I've proven God," but instead of putting it in a paper, he decides to go out on podcasts and speeches and debates and says he's done it, which is kind of interesting.
It's weird how often that happens. Like,
Yep.
Sygart, for example, who is a legit scientist, or at least was.
Mhm.
I believe he's retired now. He's open about the fact that he had an experience, but the fact
Yeah.
he is a scientist and like never like did all he just talks about it. He's like, I had this experience. Like
Yeah.
you're a scientist. Do
Fair enough.
do a science with it. I don't know.
But yeah, I mean, I'm not sure you can do a science with an experience. Like I suppose you could. I mean, if you have an experience with aliens, it doesn't necessarily mean you can do a science with it. It just means that you believe it. It's an untested hype and maybe untested testable hypothesis. But I think that yeah, you should probably devote the rest of your life to trying to find said aliens or God. Yes, but maybe that's what he's doing. Maybe he thinks that that's what he's doing. Who knows?
Maybe so. One thing I can demonstrate by way of falsifiable hypotheses and whatnot is that we have embers, ember ship holders,
Ember
something like that.
ships.
Well,
Nice.
people in the crew, welcome to the crew. We've got Tommy, the human Tommy, member for 3 months. We've got Aunt Jer, member for 14 months. That's a lot of months. I appreciate
Yeah, see,
y'all
I've
sticking around.
got debate dissection, but you've got ember ships, and that's awesome, right? Like, so yeah.
I mean, readerships are pretty damn cool too.
It's not as good as Ember Ships. It's not as good. It's just not.
And Noise Ending member for 1 month. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate y'all. Appreciate you being here and also being members and supporting and all that sort of stuff. It's been an interesting weekend, but I skipped most of it because I was off with my children today, or more precisely, I was here with my children today. My older daughter is a keto diet person, and it's working out really well for her. But since she came by today, I had to like adjust my normal menu. So I took a stab at grilling chicken.
Okay.
It was not awful, but it's been a really long time since I grilled anything.
Fair enough.
So I was doing IRL stuff and just skipping out on all the online drama. But despite all that, thank you all so much for being here. Appreciate very, very much. John Lennox has an opponent. His opponent, let's bring it up on screen here. It's not that guy. That's Justin Brierley. He's just the host.
Right.
Peter Atkins, if I remember correctly. I wrote it in the description. Yeah, Peter Atkins, who is also a professor emeritus from Oxford. In his case, I believe he's a chemist. It's not super important, but like mathematician versus chemist over whether Christianity. Shoot, what the hell was it? See, this is what I get for putting it on the thumbnail instead of in the title. Whether science can explain reality.
Yeah.
Yes. It's the title of everything. It's the title of Lennox's book. That's what the debate is for, is to promote Lennox's book.
Right, Lennox's book. Why is it always and anyway, like seriously, they do this all the time.
Buy my DVDs.
Well, I mean, it's just like that you won't hear from them for ages, and then suddenly they'll put out a book and want to debate every atheist under the sun. It's just, I just wish that they would take debates without having a book to sell, basically. But apparently that's just not a thing that they do.
I mean, on the other hand, they do crank out books rather fast. And in fairness, we're skipping the introduction as per usual, because it's just, here you have a book and you have a book. Peter has 3 times as many books as John does. Apparently, I haven't looked. I'm taking their word for it. But Peter has a lot of books too, so whatever. And we have the boobies. Yes. There's a thing that happened today that makes me very giggly about that. It's not important though. All right. Before we dig into it, what are your thoughts on the topic, Mark? Can science explain everything?
Wow. Okay. So this is a wild topic, really. I think that there's sort of the whole idea of, can everything actually be explained at all? Like, is there any sort of, so you're sort of up against Gödel's incompleteness theorem kind of thing. Like, you can never sufficiently fully explain any system. It's kind of wild to think. It's such a vague topic as well. Like, what do you mean by everything? Does science have to account for everything, or actually explain the mechanisms behind it? Like, because if you're like, well, God can explain everything, it's like, well, no, God explains nothing. It accounts for things, but it doesn't explain them. It doesn't explain how they work. It just says God done it. That's not an explanation. That's an accounting. Yeah, it's just basically saying, hey, there's a mystery there. We're going to say that God does it in some way. The case closed. Drop mic. It's ridiculous. So I think that science at least has the potentiality to explain everything, at least everything in reality. I don't know. Can anything explain everything? Not really, no. So I don't think. I don't know if everything is explainable to begin with. If we're ever going to have a complete explanation of everything, it's just like the bar is high for this one. I wouldn't take this debate.
For sure. It's way too vague. Like I'd want more clarity, and not to sound like Jordan Peterson, for me, what do you mean by everything? Like, what do you mean by explain? What is the standard? At what point does an explanation become sufficient? Or are we going by satisfactory? And it's like super subjective. Oh, well, you can explain it, but I'm not satisfied. You know, like, what is the criteria? We need clarity on that. But overall, I'm going to say no, because there are things that science can, as you said, Mark, account for, but not exactly explain. Like, we can describe the neurochemical mechanisms behind the emotion of love, but we can't necessarily explain why it activates for one set of stimulus and not for another under what seems to be equal conditions. It's really hard to say. Maybe eventually we will be able to, but as of right now, we can't, and we don't know that we ever will, you know? So,
well, I think it is the potentiality that you're looking at. So when you're sort of talking about science, you're talking about a methodology, right? You're talking about a sort of a protocol of doing things, a certain set amount of steps with the scientific methods. So, you know, I don't think it's referring to current science, right? It's not referring to the amount of knowledge that we've accumulated through the scientific process. It's referring to, can that process explain everything? But the answer to that is, I don't know, right? Because we don't know, like, how do you know that something is inexplicable, right? It's the same problem with infinity. So you find a certain class of star, you find it's got this sort of thing, and you can't explain it, right? And you do all the scientific testing and stuff, and you keep going and keep going. How do you know when it's inexplicable, when it literally is impossible to explain with science? Well, you'll never know, because just say after 120 years, humanity goes, yep, that's inexplicable. How do you know that after 200, you wouldn't find an explanation, right? Like, there's a problem there. There's a problem with knowing. I don't think you can even know that something is inexplicable. I think that all you can know is that something, we don't have an explanation for something yet, and may never do, but we don't know because the same problem occurs. So like, there's so much wrong with this title, much less the debate. Like, seriously, I'm you know, I'd love to hear why the yes side, sorry, it was what was the guy's name?
Peter Atkins.
Atkins, yeah. Why he thinks that, maybe he thinks that things aren't inexplicable at all, that inexplicable things do not exist. I wouldn't say that I know that, but maybe he has some rationale for saying there is nothing that is inexplicable. If we go by, I will say, the amount of times we thought something's inexplicable and then found an explanation, I mean, he might be using that as saying, well, it leads me to believe that there is nothing that's inexplicable, because every single time we've thought, well, we can't explain that and it'll never be explained, we've generally come up with an explanation through science. So maybe, I don't know. Yeah, I wouldn't go that far, but hey.
There have been several instances over history where people thought we will never have an explanation for thus, and then a few hundred years later, we found an explanation. For instance.
Yeah.
All right. I don't know if y'all can hear, but my dogs are going a little crazy. So I'll mute for a moment and we'll start the thing.
Sure.
Well, we have a question under discussion tonight, and it seems appropriate to begin by asking you both the question, can science explain everything? Perhaps we could start with you, Peter.
Yeah, well, I'm not a politician, so I'll give you a straight answer. The answer is yes. Of course, it hasn't yet explained everything, but there are no signs that it's going to run up against a brick wall and stop explaining everything. And I think we should, first of all, be clear what we mean.
My God, sir, you're looking at your watch already? What the hell? You've just started.
He's got somewhere to be.
What?
I don't know. Maybe he's timing the intro. He's like, okay, he's starting his intro. If he
Okay,
goes for
maybe,
5 minutes,
maybe.
I'll try to. Maybe
Give the
I'm
benefit of the
trying
doubt.
to be generous.
I just look. Okay, there's some clues that he doesn't want to be here. He's looking at his watch and he's got his briefcase or his satchel right next to him, so he can just grab it and go. I'm just going to read into this and go. Yeah, you just don't want this debate. Like Lennox, I always find him to be obnoxiously arrogant. That's just my sort of impression of him. That's just my personal opinion. I'm not saying he is. I'm just saying he comes across to me that way, and it's wow. Well,
in a way, he does himself a little bit of a disservice on that regard, because like if he were, I don't want to use the phrase humble, but like less self-absorbed, I guess. His points would land a bit more strongly. Like if he were, more of a Francis Collins type, and he's like, I believe this
Right.
because of this,
Yeah.
it would be okay, there it is. But
Yeah.
he has this sense of his own supreme importance. Like, for example,
Mhm.
when he was talking to Alex O'Connor, pitching his autobiography, and he says, and I gave it the most brilliant title you've ever heard. I called it My Story. Like, as if that's profound. He's like, he's
Yeah.
so impressed with his own relatively low level of intellect.
Yeah,
And
that is not a good title for an autobiography in the slightest.
but he really thinks that, like, he's like, I don't know, I don't know the man personally, so I don't
Yeah.
want to come across as like kicking a puppy or whatever, or a potato, as the case may be. But he comes across as like the 9-year-old who just built a train out of Legos, and doesn't just say, hey, look, I built a cool train out of Legos. He says, I built a train and it's better than the trains in the train yard because I
Right.
built it and I'm better than the engineer. It rubs the wrong way, I guess. What doesn't rub the wrong way is another membership from this Mark Reed person. I'll have to find out more about this fella, because he's been a member for 35 months. That means next month it'll kick over, and y'all will get to see what the 3-year evolving membership badge does.
Yeah.
Mhm. It'll be the first month. It'll be 3 years exactly. This channel's been monetized is June of 2023. So yeah, Mark, and I think there's like maybe 2 other people who have been since the very beginning. So that'll be really cool. I'm really looking forward to that. But thank you for sticking around so long.
Oh, my pleasure.
Hell yeah. All right. I reckon we can, let's see what Peter actually has to say. Right. He's coming from a direction of like, we haven't hit a wall of being not able to explain stuff, so why should we think there is such a wall? And
Right.
sure,
Yeah.
let's see what he's got to say.
Science, and science is basically a method of discovery based on observation and taking evidence that can be shared publicly and generally. And that is really the core of the scientific method. But it's not the only component of the scientific method that's important, because the ideas that science generates sit in a network of ideas. So ideas might emerge from biology, they might emerge from physics, chemistry, whatever, psychology, and where they overlap, they are mutually supportive. And this is extraordinarily strong evidence for the appropriateness of science as a means of discovering the truth about the fabric of reality, and indeed all there is. The second part of these introductory comments that I'd like to make is that we have to think about what we mean by the questions that science approaches. And I think there are 2 classes of question.
I don't know. I can't shake the feeling that he's hedging in some way for some reason. Like maybe he's just like trying to get clear definitions on the field, but I don't know. I can't quite put my finger on it, but there's something about the way he's approaching this that strikes me as off a little bit. But as to his point, it is fascinating how when there are areas of overlap, like he mentioned, where chemistry runs across biology, how they mutually support. Like there's very few areas in science where there's conflict, and the biggest one is within physics. It's like not even two different areas. It's physics versus physics. It's general relativity versus quantum theory, and we don't have a good answer to that one yet. But it looks like interesting things are gonna fall out when we figure that one out.
One is stupid questions, and the other is real questions. And a lot of the stupid questions, maybe that's too strong a term, a lot of class 1, let me call it, questions have emerged as extrapolations of human angst, worries about the nature of the world, projections of human ideas where they are not supported by any evidence. Science deals with real questions. Science deals with questions for which there is evidence. So, whereas a typical religious question might be, what is the purpose of the universe? Science can dismiss that as an irrelevant question. There is no evidence that there is any purpose in the universe. In fact, I think it rather wonderful that this extraordinary collection of galaxies is just hanging there, totally without any purpose whatsoever. I think that's rather grand, frankly, and rather inspiring. So when you ask questions for which there is no evidence, such as that one, what is the purpose of the universe? What is the nature of the afterlife and all that sort of thing? Science need not trouble to try to answer them because they're nonsense questions.
I don't agree with that concept of them being nonsense questions. I do like how he's trying to like frame things to be like only questions which have some legitimacy with respect to reality can we consider to be part of everything.
Yeah, that's basically what he's getting at. He's sort of that science doesn't consider. I probably wouldn't use the word stupid. I get what he's getting at. I would probably use the word inane, right? Like inane sort of means nonsensical, right? Like that's what it means. Sort of senseless, lacking in substance kind of thing, like without any merit, like it just makes no sense whatsoever, is inane. And I would probably describe it as inane things, like things that we shouldn't even consider to be things. So these are the things that are unfalsifiable, right? Can science answer where Russell's teapot, whether there's a teapot around Saturn? No, but that's a stupid question to begin with. Like that's just an inane question. There's no there, right? Like it's pointless even asking it. So he is going. I think I see what he's doing. He is sort of getting everything. He's not changing, but he's interpreting that everything as everything that matters, right? Everything that is relevant, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, if something is unfalsifiable, it's not even worth considering as a question. So, therefore, you don't have to answer it. I think that's where he's going with this.
Possibly it's hard to say because sometimes these Oxford folks they can't seem to get out of their own way. It's not just Oxford, to be clear before someone takes my words out of context, but like this specific flavor of academic who are used to lecturing for 90 minutes, they take something that could be explained in 10 and make it last for 90. And when you get too used to that, you start trying to stretch out ideas instinctively. And so like, if that is what he's getting at, then the way you just explained it, Mark, in a couple of minutes, gets directly to the point. Here's silly, pointless things that it's not worth looking into. And here's things that can be explained. Those are the things worth looking into. And he could do that in a couple of minutes, but instead he'll do whatever the hell this is to try to it's probably uncharitable of me to say that he's like just full of hot air, colloquially speaking. Not entirely, like he does have a point he's driving at, but he's fluffing it, he's overinflating it, and it's making it harder to grasp what the point is, or so it seems to me so far.
All right.
Science deals with real questions, questions for which there is evidence. And some of these are very deep. And let's not hide them under a bushel. I think one major question is, why is there something rather than nothing? It certainly seems as though there is something. And we presume that before there was something, there was nothing. So it seems to be a real question. And science has as its objective an attempt to answer that kind of question. Another deep question, of course, is the nature of consciousness and all the...
Before he gets into consciousness, I don't agree with him on the why is there something rather than nothing. That seems to me to be an inane question. There is something, or at least to all appearances there is. Every test we conduct shows that there is something. So while it's interesting to try to backtrace and discover where things came from, what mechanisms caused things to take the shape they currently did, and what may have existed before, to presuppose there was a nothing and then something inexplicable changed, that it leads into that realm of supernatural and presupposition, and we don't even know if that's the condition that obtained at the time, you know? It just...
Well, no, that's a different question, because you're sort of saying, like, you're sort of framing it as, you know, before there was something, there was nothing, but that's not the question they're asking. What they're saying is why, like, in what, so what caused there, or what series of events, or what series of state of affairs ended up, why do we have something rather than not have something? Right. So,
like, I would be on board with why do we have planets instead of loose protons, right? But there are protons, you know? I don't know. I'm probably not being super clear on this, and it's not super important. It just, the way he expounded on it, by drawing on that, there's this presumption there used to be nothing and now there's some things, and why is that is a legitimate question. I don't think it is.
No, well, I don't think that that's what he's asking. I don't think so. Like, because I can sort of say, you know, why do I have a brother instead of having no brother, right? It's because my parents banged it out. Yuck. Okay, that they had sex and had a child, right? You know, basically you can sort of in an abstract way imagine that state of being that is my brother was not there, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, or why was I born instead of not being born, right? Like we can explain that in terms of
with specifics, like
sure,
individual things. Why is there an Earth instead of another asteroid belt, you know, or nothing at all, perhaps? That's
okay.
fine. But when you try to generalize it to all of everything, it goes beyond rationality and into silliness.
No, I don't think so, because you can sort of do the same thing and abstract imagine a universe forming as opposed to not forming, right? Like, regardless of the origins of the universe, or whether it had an origin, right? You can extrapolate out, like, just for instance, Sean Carroll's child universe, right? Like, inside of a you know, universe, you have another universe birthed in some mechanism. You can explain why that would not happen, right? Like, you know, I think that because he was talking about the universe, and yeah, I get you. We can extrapolate, say, for instance, a quantum vacuum or a quantum plasma that did not form into a singularity, right? We can say, hey, why did that happen? And then come up with reasons. Now, I'm not saying we know or we can even possibly know, because I disagree we can know everything, but I'm saying that, hey, yeah, that is a question that science wants to ask. Why is there something rather than nothing?
And on that note, Sapphire actually just gave me the missing piece to express what my underlying issue is. Sapphire says, I think it's fair to ask why the universe exists without presupposing nothingness. And that's true. That's one of the things that kind of threw me off when Peter said we presuppose there was nothing and then something. And I'm like, no, we don't have to presuppose there was nothing.
Right. I would agree.
That's a separate issue. The missing piece here is that it's a false dichotomy. It isn't a matter of nothing or this universe. It's many possible universes. Why this one? You know?
No, but the true dichotomy is, why is there something and not something? Right? It doesn't matter the universe. We're not talking about this universe specifically.
I don't think that is a true dichotomy in this case, because we don't know that not something is a viable option. It could very well be a choice between a quantum chaos universe or this universe or another one made of antimatter or whatever. We don't know what the options are, but I don't think we can say that nothing is on the table. Like, that's not even a known option, you know?
Well, nothing's always on the table, because I mean, I can have something in my hand or not something, right?
Right,
Like, I can
specifics again. It doesn't work with the whole universe, you know?
Why not?
Framing, context, composition,
Like,
division, you know,
No.
something
All you're
to
doing is
exist.
increasing the scale. That's all you're doing, is increasing the scale of things. It's not composition division. I'm not saying, hey, because a particular cannot exist, the universe has to not exist. No, I'm not assigning that attribute to it. All I'm saying is that if things are formed in a certain way, we can imagine a possible world when they weren't, where they weren't formed in that way. Like, I can imagine a possible world where this coffee cup was not, you know, the ceramics wasn't, I don't know how they make ceramics. The clay wasn't dug up and it wasn't fired and all of this kind of stuff.
But the clay still exists. It isn't necessarily in a coffee cup, but it exists.
Right.
And that's the difference. We're not talking about nothing. We're talking about an alternative state for the same real stuff,
Right,
the matter, the energy, whatever. It does exist. So nothing isn't a viable option. It isn't as a coffee cup, but that matter still exists in any possible world, you know?
Right, but there's the point at the beginning of the universe where there was no matter, right? And there was no energy. And then you're into sort of quantum states. Well, that's right. We don't know that. And none of this requires us to know, right? Like, that's the whole point. None of it requires us to know anything. All we have to do is say there is some possible world where there was an option. Like, so I point you back to, say, you know, the universe formed within a black hole, right? Like, just say we're inside of a black hole at the moment. Is there is there a possible world in the greater cosmos, like in the cosmos, where that black hole that we're in did not form?
Logically, sure.
Sure, right? So therefore, the universe wouldn't have formed. So we can ask the question, why is there something rather than nothing? The reason why is because a black hole formed and then birthed the child universe in the greater cosmos somewhere, right?
Well,
maybe that's the answer.
I don't know. We could do a whole debate on
I
this.
think we got to agree to disagree on this one. I think
exactly.
Like, look, and I will concede,
the matter that formed the black hole would then not be in a black hole, and it would still exist, or whatever matter equivalent is in that part. So it's not ever no matter how far back we go, and I realize this is the Agrippa's trilemma thing again. No matter how far back we go, there's always going to be a pre-causal state, and we're not actually looking at a real nothing. We're looking at an alternative state of affairs. But yeah,
I don't know that for sure. I'll just say I don't know that for sure. I get that, but I definitely will concede and agree with you that there's absolutely zero reason we should presuppose a nothingness before the universe. Like, so at the beginning of the universe, there was no time as far as we can understand it. I mean, our physics kind of breaks down, but if the universe was atemporal, then this is one of those inane questions, those stupid questions he was taught. What was before the universe? You're kind of assuming what was before time. That's a stupid question.
Yeah, it's incoherent.
Right, it's incoherent.
Breaks logic. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, although I will say this may be the most mini debatey we've gotten about anything the atheist interlocutor said in one of these debates so far.
Well, that's true. That's true. I feel like the topic is kind of lined up against him, though. It's like he's got to ride some form of interpretation of this in order to sort of make this case. I do agree with him. Like, there's nothing. Look, I will definitely say, if you put science up against religion, you are finding way more out with science. Like, religion has not taught us anything we have been able to use effectively ever. Like, it's just a nonsensical, like, you know, science, we've actually flew through the air. You know, religion just has people drinking Kool-Aid, for Christ's sake. It's just like, it's not even a contest.
It's true. I've seen people like say, "Hey, science gave us pasteurization and antibiotics and powered flight and the internet, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." What have we gained from religion what did we discover through religion that we didn't already know before? And to the best of my knowledge, that list remains blank.
Right.
Attributes.
Left-Handed Jedi says there's a great Feynman video about the fact that nothing isn't possible. Yeah, I mean, sure. I wouldn't, you know, he probably, I mean, it's Feynman. He probably talks in way beyond my level to understand, but, you know, maybe, sure.
I can totally see Feynman. I may have even seen this video before, but just knowing the way Feynman presents, I could totally see him saying, nothing is impossible. And by that, I mean, nothing is impossible. And therefore something is impossible insofar as nothing is something in this abstract sense. Mwahaha.
Right.
Checkmate atheist.
Well, I mean, that's a physics description, nothing being just, you know, no matter, no energy, no time, no space. It's just quantum plasma in like sort of a quantum field, and that's it.
Yeah. And as many have pointed out, in order for something to be said to exist, it has to have a specific location within time and space. It can be a very long location, but it needs at least one point. And a nothing would definitionally be outside of that. So even if nothing did exist, it wouldn't exist under the definition of what it means to exist. So it can't exist. But that's philosophy. I'm easily amused, folks. It's fun.
But would that existence, like, so if it doesn't exist, would it still count as everything? Like, if it doesn't exist within space and time, does it still count as everything?
Is water wet, or does water make things wet? It's a similar situation, because since for something to exist, it has to, you know, have a specific location within time and space and so on.
Right.
Those things exist within the universe definitionally, and therefore cannot apply to the universe itself. So to exist means to exist within the universe, which means the universe itself can't exist.
Well, yeah, okay. So I don't think that the average theist would agree with you on the you know, qualifier if it exists there. But hey, that's fine.
I mean, it just kind of goes to show that if you want to mess with philosophy in certain ways, you can come up with some very amusing conclusions that are obviously not true.
Yeah, I think water makes things wet, to be honest with you. I think it does.
I don't know. I don't have a firm position on this. I've seen Lake Superior's Twitter account pointed out that to be wet means to have water upon you. Now,
Yes.
water can have other water upon itself, but it still requires
Yes.
external water. So two water molecules could make each other wet, but they are not in and of themselves wet. Probably.
Possibly. I don't see as like I don't see as if I'd use the term wet, I wouldn't say that that river is wet. I would say things are wet when they get dunked in the river. You know, like that is a wet. I think it's an adjective. Like it's not a thing in and of itself. It's an emergent property of having something covered by water. So water in and of itself is not wet.
Yeah, it's a descriptor, like dry.
Yes.
You know, that's not being wet. That's all that means. But
Yeah. I think our audience is getting wet, to be honest with. Anyway, moving right along.
My.
Phrasing.
How exciting.
appear to have consciousness. There is evidence that we do. And so it is appropriate for science to tackle that. And by consciousness, I mean all the attributes of consciousness, including morality. And so those are...
I have to take issue again. I don't believe morality is an attribute of consciousness, because there are people who are amoral and are still conscious. Like, you can have consciousness without morality. There are advantages to having morality, to be sure. But similarly, you can have morality without consciousness as we consider it consciousness. Like, for instance, a dog who knows when he's done something wrong. He's self-aware, but he's not conscious the way we mean conscious, and yet he possesses a moral sense.
Yeah, I don't know about. Are you making a distinction between ethics and morality?
Probably not. He said
Probably
morality.
Not. Okay, yeah.
I don't. That's what I'm going with. I don't think you could say that a dog has a sense of ethics.
Well,
I mean, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, they sort of have a sort of proto-morality. I wouldn't say they have morality, but that's more defined as sort of a code of conduct. Bree is gonna slap you for not thinking a dog has morality. By the way, just saying, Hive Science is gonna come down on you like a ton of bricks, and sort of castigate you for suggesting animals don't have morality.
Well,
yeah,
she may debate me over it, but I mean, I'm not too fixed on whether animals have or don't have morality. What I'm saying is that dogs do not qualify as conscious in the same way we mean conscious when we think about humans, that internally self-reflective sense of consciousness.
Oh,
but
no,
they do have a moral sense.
No, I think they have consciousness. Like, consciousness is more like, I think you're thinking about something else. There's another C word, and I'm mentally blanking on the moment. There's consciousness, and like, consciousness is just being aware of your surroundings and your place in it. So plants aren't conscious because they just react to things, right? Like, but things like dogs and birds, they're all conscious, right? So I would agree that consciousness does not necessarily mean you have morality, because dogs are conscious, but they don't really have morality.
It's interesting that we come to the same conclusion, but from opposite directions.
Different reasons, yeah.
Yes, the main contention is that consciousness does not have to include morality, but I'm nitpicking Peter's argument, and I'm probably overly pedantic. It's just it's the TISM, folks.
Real questions. Those are the questions that science can answer. And there is no doubt in my
Sapiens.
mind.
Yes, thank you, Archer. I am. It's not a C word; it's an S word. It's a sapience is what I'm thinking of. So you may be thinking of sapience, which is sort of a higher level of consciousness where you are aware of these very intricate systems and things and yourself, you know.
Okay, let me just to clarify for everybody who may be falling into the same shorthand gaps of knowledge. Sentience is the capacity to feel, consciousness is the state of awareness, and sapience is the capacity to think. And by that we mean higher order cognition, abstract reasoning, self-reflection, and wisdom. So it's the sort of metacognition, the ability to think about your own thoughts. And
Right.
that's definitely distinct from just awareness, which is what we mean by consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
But over the past, let's say 300 years, that science has done its job seriously. That is, collecting evidence, setting it in a network of concepts, and seeing the way that they are mutually supportive. I think there's no doubt that over 300 years we have made extraordinary progress, and there is no reason other than pessimism to expect that science will grind to a halt and not answer all the real great questions of existence.
Thank you very much.
I don't know that he really addressed it feels almost like a straw man. Like John hasn't had an opportunity to say there are things that science will never explain.
Right.
And I guess parenthetical, therefore we need faith. But like to this point, since Peter went first, which is I don't know, whatever. He's making a counter to an argument that no one has made yet. So I don't know.
But maybe he is setting it up for exactly that sort of. So if he goes to, well, God is something that science can't explain, you know, the sort of God science distinction that theists often make, like you can't put God in a beaker kind of thing. Science will never be able to explain God. That if God turns out to be a shared illusion or delusion of a, you know, tri-omni entity that is not real, then science will explain it. That is explained 100%, right? Like, so it sort of is begging the question on Lennox's part that God is an actual transcendent being kind of thing.
Possibly. I don't know. We'll see what Lennox has to say. And also I see Maya lurking and working
Maya.
and things. And that reminds me, first of all, hello, Maya. But also, possibly, almost certainly, I'll be on Maya's tomorrow for Bad Science Sunday. Because, you know, the day after we start Pride Month, and that's the thing. But also, thinking of Bad Science Sunday, because that's where the laser weasels hang out, reminds me of Budget Scripture Saturday, which reminds me to tell everybody that even though it's been habit for a while, I want to just like explicitly say, this show will redirect you over to Dr. Kipps for Budget Scripture Saturday when we wrap up here.
Cool.
Yeah. So it's all connected, you see?
Much so an emphatic yes to the idea that in principle science can explain everything that's worth explaining in that sense. So John, same question to you.
I really think his strongest argument is an inductive one, saying every time we've thought it can't explain something, it's explained it. I think that is the strongest argument, quite frankly. You know, I really do. And I wouldn't go so far as to say, yes, science can explain. Like, to me, I think I would say, hey, what if we discover something that's better than the scientific methods? Like, you know,
Sure. What if we
Flying.
have another Karl Popper who comes along and gives us something
Right.
even cooler than falsifiability?
Right. Flyance, right? Instead of science, we have flyance. And
Sure.
that explains everything way better and is a better methodology. Then we'd say, well, science can't explain, how quantum mechanics and this marries, but this methodology shows that this is the case. We then have a better methodology and we dump science, like why use science when you can use flyance? All right. There's no reason why you'd stick to that lame old methodology when we have something so much better,
Yeah, I mean, we've seen similar things happen in the past when Aristotle started laying out what we now consider to be science, but were at the
Right.
time schools of natural philosophy as
Yep.
opposed to general philosophy that existed at the time, or alchemy turning into chemistry,
Mm.
We get those revolutions from time to time.
Science explain everything.
Well, obviously not. Brexit, for example. That's a comical response, but I have actually two more answers to the question.
Okay, so if you're unaware, Brexit was the leaving of England from the UK. It was very content. In fact, it was basically a scam. A whole bunch of people put forth a whole bunch of lies that conned people, and they voted for something against their best interests. It's really one of those exemplary examples of how a bunch of businessmen and really some very privileged people in society got together and did a media and preyed on people's fears and their concerns to lie to them to get them to vote against their best interests. So we can easily explain that with science. It's not a problem, right? Like sort of explaining that a bunch of greedy pricks wanted to become richer is not hard to explain, sir. It's not.
You don't even necessarily need hard science for that. Like,
Nope.
you don't even need to get into psychology. But yeah, it pretty much, this is a debate from, I think it was 7 years ago. So it was shortly after Brexit. Brexit should have been a big red flag to everybody in the English-speaking world that the propaganda was getting powerful and a little out of control, and maybe we should take steps about it. But we didn't. And now we have MAGA and Turf Island and all sorts of unpleasant things because people are very prone to manipulation through propaganda.
Yeah. I think that he's sort of saying, hey, there's some things which seem inexplicable. The whole idea that because it's, and I'll refer to my earlier comments, just because it seems inexplicable doesn't mean it was. And the sort of, we can point to the way that Farage sort of, because Nigel Farage was at the head of that, he sort of said, oh, if you vote for Brexit, we'll be getting $40 billion back from the EU, which wasn't, that's just a downright lie. It was just an outright lie. It's not hard to explain. It's very easy to explain. And that, because we don't have to follow regulations, we can do whatever we want kind of thing. And that's just a misdirect because, you can do whatever you want, but if you don't meet regulations of the EU, you won't be able to sell your products there. So, you can do that, but he's not actually acknowledging the consequences of that. It's just a way to get around regulation. It's a real problem, and now England's terribly suffered because of it. Terribly.
Yeah, things are quite unpleasant, and it's not that dissimilar from the American. We'll make trillions of dollars in tariffs from other countries. That's not how tariffs work, bestie.
That's
it's
right.
Just lie to the people and promise them money.
And sort of so this lie in Brexit was that you'll get money back from the EU because we spend all this money in trade and things to the EU. It's like, that's not how it works. That's not how it works. Because then, you know, the stuff that was usually covered by the EU, you've got to set up your own institutions to do that. Like your own stuff. It's not like if you're paying, you know, certain amount towards the EU to help with medical things that you can just go, well, we don't need to spend the money anymore. No, it just means you've got to set up your own instead of a collective effort.
Yeah. And apparently they're having a great deal of trouble struggling with that, but that's a topic for another time. All right, let's hear Lennox's 2 other things that can be easily answered.
Right.
I'm prophesying. I don't actually know.
Okay, gotcha. Did science
You're going to be
explain that?
surprised at how much I agree with Peter, because the definition of science he offered us, that is collecting evidence, making observations. In fact, in his book on being, he reduces it beautifully to making observations and comparing notes. If that's what we mean by science, and it's the old meaning of science before the 19th century, then of course science can explain everything, because the very word explanation means making evidence-based observations and notes. So my short answer...
I don't think that's true, but the fact that he agrees with Peter on that, science can explain that, yes.
Well, here's the thing. Like, I get that sort of making observations and notes is a very simplified way of describing science, right? It's incredibly simple, but that's basically it, right? Like there is a multi-step process to it. You know, you have an observation, you come up with questions, you formulate a hypothesis, you then, you know, do testing kind of thing. But really, you can boil it down to observations and notes about that. Because testing, what is that? Well, it's just changing the environment, making observations, and then writing notes about it. Essentially, that's it. You'll just change something and write notes. So he's not 100% wrong in saying that that is science. And of course, what's the later things, peer review, you know, confirmation studies, all of the stuff that comes after, well, that's just writing notes. Like really, he's not 100% wrong. It's so simplified, though. I get why Lennox is raising an objection to that being the description, but that's a very shorthand way to describe the methodology. And I don't have a problem with saying, hey, that is what science is. I don't have a problem with that. I think... So is Lennox trying to say science can only explain everything that is observed? Is it the observation thing that he is trying to angle at?
I don't know yet. I mean,
Okay,
I haven't read his book either, but I mean, he's a Discovery Institute person. His premise is always science can't explain this, therefore God. You know, it's always that unspoken parenthetical. I'm not sure what angle he's going to take to get there, but that's what he always do. The crime finger. Oh no.
Oh no.
Answer is, if we accept Peter's first definition, then I agree with him entirely. Science, by definition, explains everything. But of course...
Cool, we're done. Good job.
Yeah.
Fastest, okay, second fastest debate ever.
Maybe that's why he was checking his watch earlier. He's like, how fast can I concede the debate? Maybe he was timing himself to see how fast he could concede the thing.
And to be clear, Justin asked the initial question. He started asking the initial question at 6 minutes and 31 seconds. We're now at 13 minutes and 3 seconds. So Justin asked the question, which took a few seconds. Peter did his thing. And yet, despite 2 other people talking and Lennox getting started, we are still within 7 minutes of him saying, well, yes, of course I agree. Science explains everything. Less than 7 minutes to concede. Amazing. Oh, but I'm sure he has more to say.
The meaning of the word science has changed in England, but not on the continent. In German, Wissenschaft covers the humanities and the natural sciences. And when people these days say science can explain everything, they're not referring simply to making observations and comparing notes at all. For instance, that would apply to any historical or forensic examination. And my faith as a Christian is based precisely on the kind of scientific reasoning that Peter has set forward to us. The main issue, I think, in discussion today is not whether that kind of evidence-based thinking and observation can come to every conclusion. Let me just say, by the way, that from the Christian perspective,
This is an interesting position that John is setting himself up for, because he's laying out the case that it's because of science, observation, experimentation, repeatability, that I believe in Christianity. So while his book's premise is science can't explain, therefore God, it's literally an argument from incredulity, an argument from ignorance. He's making the opposite case now. He's saying, because we can demonstrate it, therefore God. Can he demonstrate it, though? I'm not confident he can.
Oh, I'm sure he is confident he can.
We'll find out, maybe.
the writer of the third gospel tells us that that is exactly what his method was. He consulted people, he made observations, and then he put them together. So we'll call that science one. What is it?
Did he make observations? Because it's I'd have to go through the thing again, but it seems to me that Luke opens by saying, I've spoken to many eyewitnesses, and here's the totality of the story as I understand it. There's no observations, there's no measurements, there's no experimentation. It's just, here's all the stories I've taken in, put together. It's just the notes. I don't know. Maybe I'm mistaken.
Of course, at stake today is the question, can the natural sciences answer every question? And there I think that that is simply not the case. The Nobel Prize winner, Peter Medawar, many years ago, he wrote a very interesting book on the limits of science. And he said, we do science a disservice, natural science, if we think it can address any questions. And every question. And he referred to the basic questions of Karl Popper, the questions of a child. Where do I come from? Where am I going? What is the meaning of life? Natural science doesn't answer questions like that. And Medawar added it is to religion, philosophy.
Well, I disagree. Like,
yeah, same here.
Some of those things, you know, when I was a child, I had those questions. What is the meaning of life? And after, you know, going through every book I could get my hands on, I very quickly realized that I was sort of pigeonholing the question. The mistake I was making was assuming there was one meaning to life, when that's not necessarily a given. There's multiple potential meanings. For example, we know from biological evolution that one of the meanings of life is to reproduce. That's why life is here and what life is designed to do. But that's not the only thing we do, or we wouldn't need to, you know, we'd still be single-celled organisms asexually popping off copies, you know?
Yeah.
So there's more to it.
Well, and I think Atkins has all sort of addressed part of this by saying there are some questions which are nonsensical. You know, like where we are going. He already covered this, saying, what is the purpose of the universe? And it's a very similar type of question, right? Like it's a sort of a nonsensical question, like where are we going? You know, like what do you mean by that? Wherever we choose to go. It suggests that there is a destination in mind instead of the seemingly random wandering that we kind of do kind of thing. So, you know, I get what Lennox is getting at, but I feel that Atkins saw this coming and sort of said there are some questions that are nonsensical. They don't make any sense whatsoever. So, you know, they're not even things to be explained. You know, they're just inane, irrelevant questions.
Yeah, just silliness. What's not silly is Aunt Jer points out that YouTube isn't making us aware that we're receiving gifts. And so I did switch over to my fan funding on the live chat, and it showed as not to question Aunt Jer, but I can confirm what she says. Jedi sent us tulips, Sapphire sent a butterfly, and Maya sent a flow state. Hell yeah. Thank you all so much. I don't know what that means, but I appreciate presents, especially, you know, tulips and butterflies. And I don't know what flow state means, but
I don't know what
sure.
that is. What is presents? I don't.
So
did they release something and I missed it? Damn it.
What they had been doing is on vertical streams, because very few people would send super chats. They copied another feature of TikTok, which you can send gifts and whatnot. But on TikTok, it pops up on your screen as the creator saying, hey, you received, you know, this many gems or a building or whatever I don't know what TikTok does, but something like that. So YouTube started doing it on the vertical streams, because that's why there are vertical streams, is to copy TikTok. And now they've started to apply it to the horizontal streams, but we don't get notifications. It pops up in the chat, but unlike a super chat, it doesn't show up in the studio side. So we don't see it. We don't know. But apparently,
I haven't missed any then. Dang.
It's weird. I guess you buy jewels ahead of time, and then you use jewels to buy these gifts. And so it's basically like a super chat with extra steps, or more like a super sticker, I suppose. But yeah, I guess YouTube has been promoting it.
How do you buy them? I'm so confused. I don't know anything about it. I knew I should have watched the YouTube update streams like a maniac. Look, no one watches those. Let's face it. Let's face it.
I watch them from time to time, but I must confess I have not been up to date on the jewels thing. Apparently YouTube, when they started pushing them out to horizontal streams, they like gave everybody 1,000 jewels to use if you can figure out how to redeem them. And then once you're in the menu, you're supposed to say, hey, this is nifty, and buy more. But because the creators don't know when they're used, nobody gets that dopamine reward of recognition from sending them, because we don't know. And so people just stop.
So, but how do you send a gift? How'd you do that, Tommy? Let me in on the secrets of your wisdom.
Ooh, you can earn jewels by existing. I would like to earn jewels by existing.
Wow, they're
That's
like
pretty neat.
wrinkles. I can earn
One
wrinkles
thing I
by
can
existing.
see,
That's it.
Titan Uranus. Still the best fucking name on YouTube. Titan Uranus has been a member for 6 months. Hell yeah. Thank you, Titan. So apparently there's a gift button next to the super chat button. Is that only if you're watching on a phone, or does it show on your computer too?
Oh, maybe it's because I'm on computer. Do you have a stream for vertical as well for this? Am I on 2 streams and I didn't know? Okay, gotcha.
No,
yeah, maybe it's only on mobile.
I scrapped doing the double streams a while back because I was getting less views on both together than I had been even on horizontals by themselves. It was not just splitting the views, it was reducing the total views. And so there's not really a point to it. At least for me. I'm sure it's different for other people. Like, you know, there's some people, there's some creators who do horizontal streams and get hundreds or thousands of views, even though they're horizontal. And there's other creators who do exclusively vertical, and I don't know. No one understands how YouTube works or why. But for me, doing both streams at once was hurting the channel overall.
Okay. Behind the curtain. Yeah, tangents in the chat. Thank you, though. I didn't know how anything on YouTube works, which is kind of strange. But hey, here we are. Here we are.
Well, you know, it keeps evolving. It's I don't know, something like that. It's reproducing, I guess.
And so on, that we must go to answer those questions. I think science is immensely powerful. It is immensely exciting, and it uncovers a vast amount about our universe. But I have a problem by going too far. I'm a mathematician and I'm rather interested in logic. And you know,
oh,
if
I
you
didn't
say
know.
that,
I didn't know, Lennox. You don't mention it every frigging 5 seconds that you're a mathematician. I forgot. Like, completely missed my mind.
See, I'm over here chuckling because as a mathematician, it's natural for him to be interested in logic. And yet, in these debates, he immediately goes off it. Like, again, the book's premise is science can't explain everything, therefore God. There's a fallacy baked in right there.
Well, see, Lynn's my mother-in-law, Lynn's mother is a mathematician, and she's a doctor in mathematics, actually. Very, you know, and she doesn't tell me every 5 minutes, you know. Just
ring,
saying.
hey, Mark, did you know I'm a mathematician?
Yeah, yeah.
In case you forgot.
science can explain everything, or science is the only way to truth, as it's often put. Well, that is not a statement of science. It's a statement of belief. And so if it's true, it's false. Maybe it's too early in the evening for logic like that, but there's a huge logical problem. So
I don't
Why
think
would
that
early
follows.
in the evening be a problem? Like, wouldn't it be that's too late in the evening? Like, you're tired?
He hasn't
don't
had
know.
enough whiskey to follow or something. But like, just because something, if just granting that it's a statement of belief, which it isn't because it's a testable hypothesis, but never mind.
Right.
Even if it were a statement of belief, that doesn't mean it's false. Like, at best, Lennox is missing a premise there, and more likely he's something else is afoot. One thing that does make sense: Left-Handed Jedi sent a super chat for $2. Those I can see. Thank you, Jedi. And Jedi says, "Wait, he knows maths? No way. We had no idea."
to sum up my position, science is powerful. Its methodologies are extremely important also in the sphere of history, forensic science, and in the sphere of religion. But I'm going to be careful here because Peter is right.
What? What methodology do you have that produces so a methodology is only as good as the results it produces. That's it. Like, you can't say that a methodology is effective if it doesn't produce consistent results. Like, if you have a methodology for burning fat, for instance, right? Like, because, you know, you want to, you know, get rid of weight, and you have a methodology. The methodology that is good is the one that works. Like, because methods is practical, right? Like, it's not like, how do you know? And this is a big thing with religion. How do you know that someone's methodology is effective? They all can't agree on it. Like, some it's always once saved, always saved. Some it's, you know, works. Some it's, you know, you need to be baptized. Some it's this. Some it's, you guys can never agree on any methodology, and they all have equally unreliable results. People praying for stuff doesn't work. People doing good works, it doesn't seem to change whether good things happen to them. You know, how do we tell which one is working? We have to die to find out? I don't. Okay, sorry, let him go. But wow, okay, that's weird.
It's a trip, and also, shoot, I can't see it now. It was visible in fan funding before, but now it disappeared on me. But Aunt Jur sent a gift, which is a turn it up thing. I wish I could show these, but I don't have a button inside Studio to do it. But it is a turn it up thing, which is neat. So thank you. And Jur says, my boy is a DJ. I do try clicking on received gifts to see if you can watch the animations.
Yeah,
yeah, I could see like a still image of it in fan funding, but then it disappeared. And like, I don't know, YouTube needs to fix its shit. TBH.
Yeah, and while you're there, do hit that like button, like you know, as fast as Lennox tells you he's a mathematician.
Right. Subscribe early and often. Although, I don't know, I'm a little bit tickled by another one of the unrelated things that happened today that I was too busy living a real life for. I ended up gaining a whole bunch of subscribers for something someone who really does not like me did, and that's hilarious to me.
Oh, no.
But do subscribe. I very much appreciate it.
Yeah, sub away.
Hell yeah.
Often in his critique of superstition, of mythology and nonsense. And science has helped to clear away some of the nonsensical things that sometimes religious people profess. But what really makes me, in one sense, very much in favor of the Christian faith is that from the very start it claims to be evidence-based. And the central piece of evidence is, of course, as you probably know, the resurrection of Jesus Christ. So
cool. I mean, every religion claims to be evidence-based. They're like, here, let me show you the evidence. And then there's just more claims and assertions, but never mind. Cool. Resurrection, specific claim. If it's scientific, it's repeatable. So bring Jesus back here and do it again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what they're intending to do. It's just that, you know, their department hasn't gotten funding for about 2,000 years. So he can't, you know, we're still waiting on that repeatability, you know, the what do they call the experiment after you've done the initial one? It's called something that's been slipping my mind and I haven't been able to remember it. The
confirmation, verification.
No, it's something study. Duplication study. I think that might be it actually. Yeah, so you know, we've been waiting for the duplication study for 2,000 years. I don't think they're getting the funding, but when he says evidence, I have an issue with sort of anecdotal evidence really being considered evidence. It's like if a scientist said, well, I did this study on bacteria and this is what happened. Trust me, bro. You know, like it really is just someone saying, hey, I did a thing. Don't replicate it. Just trust me that it happened in the initial one. You know, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Like for him to consider, you know, a what's written in a book from 2,000 years ago to be on par with scientific evidence. Like, why would you think that's the case? That's ridiculous. So I dislike the way he's trying to equate the two here, because really he doesn't have evidence for the resurrection. He's got evidence that people wrote about the resurrection. That's what he's got.
Mm-hmm. Other people were convinced at some time in the past.
Yes. Yeah.
And I guess that's supposed to be convincing.
Because don't forget, none of the Gospels were contemporary to the life of Jesus, right? They weren't written during Jesus' lifetime or even slightly after. The earliest Gospel is like 70 years later. 70, 30? No, Paul's writings were later.
Yes, Paul's were soonest out of the writings we have, but they are all after, very definitively after. The Gospels, there's a range. If I recall correctly, Mark is the earliest, and it's somewhere between 30 to 80-ish years after. Most people just grant 30 because the apologists are obsessed with it, and the rest of us don't really care. But it's somewhere in that range.
Right. But so you don't have evidence of the event. You have evidence of people saying the event happened, right? Like, it's really important to realize that people talking about something happening is not the same as having evidence of the thing happening. Right? Like, it is the case that what we have is anecdotes and testimony, right? Now, in a court of law, testimony may be a form of evidence. Yeah, it can be testimonial evidence, sure. But that isn't how science works. You don't have testimonial evidence in science. And may I add that supernatural things and magic and possessions and things aren't allowed in court. It's called spectral evidence. It was thrown out years ago because Salem witch trials.
Among a few other things. It's
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but back in the first century, it hadn't been thrown out yet. I guess I don't.
True.
But yeah, like we can determine based on witnesses that a thing probably did or didn't happen because it's how
Right.
history works, is probability. But when you want to do science, you need that reproducibility. You wouldn't accept someone saying, "Hey, I took this magic drug and it killed all my bacteria." You need to see that it's the drug killing the bacteria and that there in fact is a drug, you know?
Yes.
Noise Ending says there was a whole Conjuring movie about that. It wasn't very good.
Oh, I was talking to my wife about this, how the Conjuring movie made the Warrens look so credible, and it's annoying because they were so sort of badly fraudulent, like the Loretta character or Loretta Warren herself, like she got all of these feelings about ghosts that just, were just bullcrap. Like she didn't solve or help anything. Like it really annoys me that The Conjuring makes them out to be these heroes when they were just absolute fraudsters.
Testimony as opposed to evidence.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in Peter's methodology. I use it all the time, but somehow he feels that a Christian like me doesn't use that methodology within my own Christian faith. Final point.
You don't.
You can't.
You can't. Yeah, right.
It's like I would love to hear him explain how he does that, because maybe he's doing Christianity differently than every other Christian who ever Christianed, and that's not impossible, but I would like to hear how.
Well, basically, science has those steps that you have. You have observation, right? So what are you observing would be the first thing. If you're saying you're observing the crucifixion or you're observing the Bible, sure. Okay, that's fine. You're observing something in the world that raises questions, and those questions are raised. Is it true that Jesus rose from the dead? If you're using the resurrection as your base, right? That's the question that comes up. But the next one is testing. And testing is, focuses on falsifiability. How do you falsify that? Right? Like, can you come up? So when you have a hypothesis, there's two, right? Like when you're actually doing the process, there's two. There's the null hypothesis and the alternate hypothesis, right? The null hypothesis is basically the opposite of what you're trying to test, right? It's basically like, oh, I think this drug cures cancer. The drug doesn't cure cancer, right? Like that's the null hypothesis. It's the one that's defaulted back on that you're trying to overcome. So how the testing works is that you formulate a way to see if that null hypothesis is true, right? And if you cannot show that the null hypothesis is true, then you go to the alternate, that, hey, the drug does in fact cure cancer, right? So how would you do that for a drug? Well, you would give some people these drugs who have cancer and check to see whether their cancer's gone, right? That's the idea. That's falsification, right? And then you write it up kind of thing as, past the null hypothesis. This is how science is done generally, right? There's multiple different methods, but that's the general idea. How do you then, what's the null hypothesis? That Jesus rose from the dead. Well, the null hypothesis is that he didn't. So how do you make a test that shows that Jesus didn't rise from the dead?
Right. You can't do that kind of thing for a single event. All we can do is like look at, well, nobody else has ever risen from the dead in any verifiable way. So probably not, but unless we get our hands on another Jesus and do it again, it's not actually falsifiable.
Well, you know, you can point to, well, Jesus isn't around anymore. You know, but how, like, you're absolutely right. But the problem is that the religion frames that question in such a way that is unfalsifiable, right? Like, you can point to, you know, nobody saw Jesus wandering around, you know, or everybody didn't see Jesus wandering around, right? Like, he should have been seen by Romans and the Sanhedrin and all of these other people, and they didn't see him. Only his close followers saw him, right? You can point to these things and they'll say, oh, but no, he rose up into heaven afterwards. It's like, it's completely and utterly unfalsifiable. And he mentioned Karl Popper. You know what Karl Popper's position on unfalsifiable questions is. You know what his position is. That there's
no point.
They're not even worth considering as true. So, you know, it is this case that you're setting it up to say, oh, well, I use the scientific method. No, you don't. Because in order to use the scientific methods, you have to have a falsifiable test in order to do it. And you don't have it.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people running around. Frank Turek has been saying for a while, Christianity is falsifiable. All you got to do is find the bones of Jesus. No.
No.
That's, first of all, that's unreasonably specific. But also, no, like, to really put a spotlight on what Popper said is, if there's no way to show that it could be false, then it cannot be considered to be true. That's not to say an unfalsifiable proposal is false, but you cannot rightly say that it's true until you can show that it withstands possible falsification. Like, it's just not right to say Christianity is true or Islam is true, or it's true that there's a teapot in space. You know, you can't say it's true unless it can withstand a falsification. If there's no chance it's false, then it's not true either.
Right. Well, and here's the thing. I even think that if we did find the bones of Jesus, I honestly think that the Christians would be like, see, he rose into heaven and left his body behind. You know, I really think that they would do apologetics as to why Jesus left those bones there, you know, in order to...
Or they just go, well, how do you know they're Jesus's bones? You can't prove that Jesus.
Well, yeah, but just say we could as an hypothetical. Just say we absolutely definitively prove. Right, exactly. Or we found him and you know, it had the diary of Jesus in there, kind of thing. You know, just say we found that. I still think they would still sort of say, hey, you know, he left his earthly body behind and rose up into heaven. That's why it's there. And they'd still continue to believe. I honestly think it's still unfalsifiable.
Yeah. Yeah, there's I mean, it's been falsified 6 Ways to Sunday before now.
Yeah.
For other various reasons. And they just add another apologetic to explain. That's what apologetics are, is explaining away these things that make people go, huh, that's not true though.
Yeah, but as you pointed out, we don't use scientific methodology for history. It's just not something we can do.
Yeah, like we can apply science to certain things, like, you know, is the Shroud of Turin actually from the 1st century? That's a scientific question we can actually investigate. Right. It's not, by the way.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I did absolutely not.
Oh goodness, it's so fun. But yeah, most of the stuff, nope.
Nope.
I think explanation, can science explain everything? we need to tease out what we mean by the word explanation. For example, the law of gravity doesn't explain gravity. It tells, as Newton realized, it tells us wonderful mathematics that we can calculate the way in which heavy bodies move in relationship to one another. But even when we say science explains, often it doesn't explain comprehensively. And
What do you mean by explain? The law of gravity does explain how gravity works. So what do you
Right.
want it to explain for it to be considered explained in a way that would satisfy you? And that's why definitions matter. Because however he phrases it, well, we want to know why gravity works. Cool, that's not
Right.
the law of gravity, that's the theory of gravity. It's
Mhm.
time and space curves in the presence of mass. There's your why. If you want the how for that, then go back to the law of gravity to get the math, you know?
But I feel like it's really weird to see a mathematician sort of go to a philosophical side of things and sort of say, well, why is any of this there? Why is this happening? Where it's sort of like him implying the purpose kind of thing. You know, what's the purpose of gravity? You know, why do things attract the way that they do? Like, what's it supposed to benefit? And it's like, well, it may not be about that. You're sort of putting agency on it because you want there to be agency. I honestly think he's sort of angling for well, when we explain it, we're giving a sort of philosophical reason about the purpose of it, rather than, like you said, the mechanics of it, like why it occurs, the cause, you know, mass causing space to curve, and that space curvature is gravity. Right? Like he's trying to say, but why? What purpose does that have?
Maybe.
And can I just add? Can I just add quickly? What does God explain?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's an excellent point.
That not only does not explain why anything happens, because you're sort of appealing to, well, God wanted it that way. You can always go, well, why did God want it that way? It still doesn't explain that, right? And the other one is, it doesn't even explain the mechanics, right? It doesn't even explain how gravity works.
Yeah, it's just because I said so.
Yeah, essentially.
Oh, that always drove me nuts when my grandmother said that. I'm like, that's not actually a reason, Grandma. Damn it. Another thing that science cannot explain is a super chat from Jester, Lord of Shenaniganery, who sends us $5. Thank you, Jester. And says, I mean, the teapot is actually floating around Uranus, but you'd have to ask Titan for the exact flight path and how to counteract the cloaking technology.
I don't know. I could explain. I think science could explain that, because Jester has a pathological love of shenaniganery, and yeah.
Okay, that's fair. I'm just amused by it. You know, the teapot, even if it's in a stable orbit, if it is in fact about orbiting Uranus, it will eventually, even though, you know, interplanetary space is virtually empty, it's not quite empty, and so there is still friction, and so an unpowered teapot will eventually crash into the planet, and when that happens, the teapot will go into Uranus, and that I find very, very amusing.
Wow. I think you can get a teapot for that on Amazon, from what I know.
I mean, I've seen Bertrand's teapots here and there. They have one in the ACA library, for example. Who's to say? I mean, Bertrand Russell lived a good long time. He probably had multiple teapots.
Probably.
You can't prove he didn't.
Wasn't he English?
He was very English, yes.
Yes. Yeah, no, he would have had multiple teapots, yeah.
For sure. I've been considering one of the classic debates that everyone says everyone needs to watch or listen to is the Russell Copleston debate which took place a little over 50 years ago. It was on the radio. It was so far back. But it's not a debate the way we think of debates. I was actually considering it for today because it keeps coming up every so often. And it's like 50 minutes to an hour long, but it's just a conversation. And it's relatively long-winded. I don't know. I'll probably eventually we may do it anyway, but it's not like a debate. So I don't know.
Right. It's more a discussion, yeah.
Yeah. Uranus is indeed quite thick. It's true.
Just want to throw a very simple analogy into this, which I find quite useful. About boiling water. How would you explain boiling water? Well, you can explain it by talking about heat conduction and agitation of molecules of water. You can also say the water is boiling because I'd like a cup of tea. Now, those two explanations are very different. They don't conflict. They complement. One is a scientific explanation, natural scientific, but the other is an explanation in terms of the intention and purposes of an agent. And Peter said quite clearly that science doesn't go in for that kind of purpose, but that doesn't mean that kind of purpose doesn't exist. In fact,
no, he's wrong. He's wrong. You can go into all of that, right? You can go into the need for the human body to have hydration. You can go into the effect of tannin molecules on the tongue and its sensory observations, right? He's trying to make human imperatives to be this opaque thing that we can never understand kind of thing. And in a way, he's kind of right. You know, everybody has their own sensory experience and their own preferences. But I think as far as something like wanting food or wanting sort of hydration in some way, I think we can explain that, sir. And I think we can do it pretty scientifically. You know, like I don't remember religion finding out that taste buds were a thing. Like, this is the thing. He's trying to make it so like, oh, we don't understand why anybody does anything they do. Psychologists would like a word with you, sir.
He's right, just he's wedging to try to open up a gap he can fit his God into. But yeah, I mean, as Tommy mentioned psychology, and this is, I caught him earlier on trying to make a distinction between natural sciences and the humanities, as if those are not science. The way we do those sciences necessarily needs to be slightly different, but you can still apply all the tools of science to those things. It's just harder.
It is, yes, and it is applied. Like, so observation, hypothesis testing, you know, peer review, it's all the same stuff. We call it a soft science, but that doesn't mean it's not a science, sir. And, you know, he's trying to, what was the, was it Aquinas, the proximate cause? Right? He's talking about the reason an agent did the cause of something is the proximate cause, I think it is.
Aristotle had the 4 causes, and I think Aquinas borrowed one of them. He was saying you can see evidence of God's action in the universe by the fact that there is an intention. And for there to be an intention, something had to intend it. But we don't actually see evidence of intention.
I could be thinking of something else.
Yeah, I'll just look it up because it's been a while since I did the deep dive into Aristotle. Aristotle 4. Help if I spelled 4 correct. I could just use the number, but I'm very silly, so I'm typing it out. 4 causes. All right, so he's got the material cause, what the thing is made of, the formal cause, which is the structure, shape, or essence that gives the matter its identity, for example, being a chair or a table instead of a tree, the efficient cause, which is the primary source of the change, or who did the shaping into a chair or a table, and the final cause, which is the purpose or goal. Why did they make the table? Kind of thing.
So Yeah, so I'm thinking the efficient cause kind of thing. So that's the person that did it kind of thing. So that's what he's trying to get in here, where there are some things that are caused that has no, like, it doesn't require, you know, I don't think it requires a trigger kind of thing, like radioactive decay. It doesn't trigger; it just happens.
Yeah. In fact, that's something of a smoking gun within the universe, that things can just happen. And if things can just happen, then the universe itself could be among those things that just happen.
We don't know that, though.
Yeah.
Before they knew anything about the theory of heat in physics. So what I want to say is this. The God explanation is different from the science explanation. God no more competes with science as an explanation of the universe than Henry Ford competes with physics as an explanation of the motor car.
Okay, thank you. Great introductory statements.
What?
What? This is what I was talking about earlier, and I felt like I was being mean when I said it. But he just says this nonsensical drivel and acts like it's the most profound thing the audience has ever heard.
That's a terrible analogy. Because the two people built motor cars, and you can show that there's a motor car at the end of it. Like, what? That's a terrible analogy, sir.
In a lot of ways. Like,
Yeah.
for example, we can demonstrate that Henry Ford existed. So there's that, for starters.
Yeah.
We don't look at the motor car and have to presuppose there must have been a Henry Ford. And also, that's a misattribution of invention. Henry Ford did not invent the motor car. The Germans did. Henry Ford applied the already existing technology and concepts of an assembly line to the motor car. He took two things that already exist and put them together.
Yeah, I mean, he sort of invented the modern production line kind of thing. It definitely was something that it already existed, but I think he did a lot of work to refine it into sort of a modern version of what it was.
Oh, sure. He made it more efficient, like interchangeable parts, for example. Like that was part of his business plan is, the head gasket for any Ford should fit into any other Ford kind of thing. And that was kind of brilliant, TBH.
From both of you. I'm sure there's lots you want to respond to there. Peter, where do you want to begin?
Well, there's so much nonsense to hack away from.
This may be the phrase of the evening. Yes.
Yeah. Let's go to what you called the core of your approach, which is the resurrection of Jesus. Never happened. I mean...
Well, that's an assertion, Peter. What about some evidence?
Well, what about some...
What? It never happened. Well, what about some evidence that it never happened? How about some evidence that it did?
That would be a good start. Now, in fairness, he did walk into that rake. Like, Lennox is just laying there waiting to be dishonest and try to reverse the burden of proof. But Peter stepped right on it by saying, well, the resurrection never happened. And boom, positive claim. And John just snapped on it like a bear trap.
Yeah,
but it's still hilariously ironic.
Well, I would probably go to, hey, we have evidence that things die, a lot of evidence, and none whatsoever that they resurrect. Again, I would go to simply an inductive argument and say, hey, if you, considering that everything we're aware of that ever lived has died and not come back, right, as far as we know, and we have trillions of examples of this, you really need to provide an example of something that has. And it can't be the thing that we're currently arguing about. It has to be another example, that we've actually tested. So what the hell, guys? Seriously? Wow.
I mean, if we really want to dig into it, we could probably come up with something just for funsies, but it's so wild. We'll just let him continue.
Oh, wow.
Evidence that it did happen, other than people who are writing gospels of 80 years later than the event that they purport to be talking about. No, of course it didn't happen. How could it happen? And science, I think, could even go so far as saying it simply could not happen. When you've got a dead body, it's decaying straight away. There's no way that it's going to reconstitute in some way. It's absurd. And I accept that it is the foundation of Christian faith. That doesn't mean to say that it's true. And so let's dismiss that as something that simply has no evidence whatsoever of any credible
Before we
nature.
dismiss it, let's hear a response from Dom, because obviously this is an
Okay, so here's a problem. Lennox said so much bullshit, and he wasn't given the chance to actually refute any of it. Like, he refuted one thing, and he basically said that that didn't happen, was sort of cut off by Lennox. Like, so, you know, Atkins didn't jump in when you were saying any of your bullshit. Like, seriously, I think this is a bit of a, you know, this is a problem. You've got him going on and on about all this crap. Atkins saying one thing, and then Lennox jumping in, and then the moderator goes, oh, well, let him respond to that. It's like, well, what about the other 10 things that he said that were nonsensical?
Yeah, like he can wait his turn to respond, just like Peter waited his turn to respond.
Right.
But no, this is see, this is one of the things I do not like Justin Brierley, and this is one of the reasons why, is he will use red herrings to redirect the debate into his preferred interlocutor's favor.
Right.
He's very nice about it, but he's still doing dishonest bullshit tactics to put his thumb on the scale. And I do not like that.
No.
Because now we're red herringed into, was Jesus real?
Yeah.
Instead of Peter being able to answer the other things that John said.
Yep.
important issue. What counts as evidence and what are the
and
assumptions
indeed,
we make?
I suppose you would argue that science cannot explain the resurrection.
Well,
I wouldn't quite argue that way. I would say that science cannot forbid a resurrection, because you see, science proceeds on discovering the regularities.
It can't forbid a Bigfoot, aliens, or magic juju beans either. Like, it doesn't forbid any of these mystical things, but we can say confidently that they don't exist because there is just a lack of evidence for it. That's the thing. Like, it's like saying, well, you can't prove with science that storks don't deliver babies.
I mean, we can, though, because we can show where babies come from.
Yes, and we can show that bodies don't come back when they're dead. And if you want to be able to say, well, that did happen, you need the evidence to show it, or else we can say it didn't. Because that's not how bodies work. That isn't how babies are delivered. Juju beans are not magic. Dude, seriously. I don't know what that is. I just made something up.
I'm pretty sure it's some kind of candy, but it's not important. They could be magic, though. You can't prove they're not.
Could be. Could be.
Nature works and has done a very impressive job. And the fact that we know that dead bodies don't normally rise, that is a law of nature in that sense, means that we recognize something very special happened, if it did happen. Now, there are two issues here. The first of all, there's the in-principle one, which always ends up in talking about David Hume, who said that miracles are violations of the laws of nature. And I do not believe they are. That's point number one, and I can go into.
Cool, you don't believe it. Why? Show us why that's a reasonable thing.
He just said it's against the laws of nature, and he doesn't believe that it's against the laws of nature. Really? So you think the laws of nature says that because the laws of nature are consistent. It's the uniformity of nature. You know, that old chestnut that, hey, when we test something, it keeps happening the same way. It's why gravity doesn't suddenly reverse. And what's hilarious is a bunch of pre-suppers have tried to say, hey, atheists can't show that the laws of nature are consistent. And it's like, no, you guys can't. Because in this second, the laws of nature could be suspended in miraculous ways so that, my body flies apart. But it doesn't, because there's laws of nature. There's a uniformity of nature. Like, this is a basic foundation of science. And the thing is that theists have taken this on board and then gone to why miracles don't adhere to the laws of nature. It's like, then you don't have uniformity of nature. You don't have it.
Yeah, with miracles, it's just, if it happens, it's accidental, or like, what are we doing?
Right.
That if you like. Do you want me to?
Do you want to believe? Well, we might as well, since you.
Yes.
Well, you better define a miracle. I think a miracle is defined as something that is against the laws of nature.
But I don't define it like that at all. A miracle,
define it.
miraculum in Latin simply means something to be wondered at. But we're talking about something supernatural.
Okay,
Now,
stop.
it
stop.
seems.
So that is an etymological fallacy. Just because it means something in Latin doesn't mean that's the way you're using it, right? Because if you're saying that a miracle is something to be wondered at, it means that if I see my favorite sports ball team make a goal from across the field, I go, wow, that is amazing. Doesn't mean it's a miracle, right? In anything but a metaphorical sense. And if you're applying a miracle to just something to be wondered at, then they happen all the time. I wonder how he can be so ridiculously absurd.
He's miraculously
He's
absurd.
a miracle. It's a miracle. You know, you are then devaluing miracles to the point of just being everyday commonplace things that we wonder at. I don't understand. This is so nonsensical. This is so clouding language. So miracle can just be anything you want it to be. Okay, but what separates a miracle in the way that, you know, you see a cat, like, you know, almost vertically run up a fence, from somebody rising from the dead?
It's a quite remarkable analogy. As I mentioned earlier, I had two of my kids over today for dinner, and I always start dinner with salads, and we just put on random YouTube stuff to watch while we eat the salads.
Right.
And my son picked Daily Dose of Internet, and TLDR, there's a clip in the video where a person drives a Jeep vertically up a cliff. Like,
Right.
I'm sure it's a camera angle thing and it's not quite vertical, but it looked like it was driving vertically up the cliff. And I, you know, even knowing that they can do remarkable things in very specific circumstances, I still kind of had to pick my jaw up a little bit, like, what? You know, so yeah, I wondered at it. It filled me with a sense of wonder, and therefore it was a miracle. It's a miracle Jeep. We just watched, you know, the high priest of freaking Popeye the Sailor miracle a Jeep up a sheer cliff.
Right.
Somebody start a new religion, I guess.
Yeah.
To be very clear that when Hume said miracles violate the laws of nature, he was really not understanding. And the great interpreter, Anthony Flew of David Hume.
No.
Sorry?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I think you're going to object to the raising of Anthony Flew.
Oh, well, I'm not raised Anthony
Let's
Flew.
get back to raising
He has
Jesus.
died and hasn't risen. I do see that point. But the point is this. C.S. Lewis
So
long
if
ago
you're
told
unaware, Anthony Flew was a lifelong atheist who then had sort of a deathbed conversion kind of thing, you know, when he was close to dying. Well, I think he did. Like, there's some records that he did, but that's besides the point, right? Like, it's just brought up as this lifelong atheist converted. And, you know, we can go, but we've got lifelong Christians that deconverted. So what?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we don't bring up, you know, but Matt Delahunty was a Christian and he deconverted. You know, it's sort of this, you know, because one person converted, that makes everything he said true. It's just a nonsensical statement. So Yeah, and we hear it all the time. Anthony Flew used to be an atheist all of his life and made arguments against it. And then when he was dying, he converted to Christianity because he saw it's like, dude, no. Just that's just more anecdotes.
Mm-hmm. In a very, it's a rare anecdote because they always bring up flu. Like, I'm sure there are others. Of course, there are others, but they don't know any others. But that's neither here nor there. But it's also, it goes sideways as well. Like, Christians become Muslims, or Muslims become Christians, or insert other options here. Like, everybody's becoming everything else all the time because of experiences or burning in the bosom. Different flavors of Christian. A few months ago, we heard from a person who had been a Mormon and was becoming Eastern Orthodox. Whatever,
Little analogy. If I stay in a hotel tonight,
Tommy makes an interesting point. I actually brought up Tommy in an oblique way fairly recently. I was talking to someone, and I was like, I know a person who actually did get healed from terminal cancer and then became an atheist. Like, being healed from cancer because it was the doctors who did the work. God never showed up,
Right. Tommy has a really good podcast as well. I try to catch it as much as I can.
The Humanity Live, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Yeah. I'm often lurking around those parts myself. On occasion, I may even show up on the screen.
put £100 in a drawer. And
but I did respond to Tommy, and I think this is important. And when he points that out, they then say, "Oh, well, you're just angry at God," and that's their answer to it. Like if somebody,
Yeah, you're mad at God. Oh goodness, if God could actually do healings. I mean, I've said before, I am ready to believe. I've seen enough things that I would consider miracles, like some of the things that should have killed me and didn't. Yes, we can explain those with science, but some of them they're just too coincidental. I'm willing to call them miracles. I've seen things go the other way too, like my most recent car, for example. It's a low scale thing, but it's still a thing. I had one day to get a replacement car. And so I took a bus and I went to a dealership I'd worked with in the past. So they already had my information. Interestingly, the information was all in my dead name. And so they had to update everything, but they were very accommodating about it. They're like, whatever, it's all good. Not our place to judge. We're here to hook you up with the car. We did the government paperwork, the DMV paperwork, got the license transferred over, got the inspection, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Everything was ready to go. We finished it in a day, which in and of itself is a minor miracle. In that you can't really do that anymore. There's so much paperwork and other processes. But we pulled it off in a single day. They handed me the keys. I got in. I turned the key. The radiator exploded. We'd gone for a test drive to make sure it worked. It was as soon as I'd signed the paper, the radiator exploded as soon as I turned the key. That's sort of like a negative miracle. It's a God is real and he hates me moment,
Well, if you have to say that miracles are things that cause wonder, then that has to be applied to bad things as well, right? Yes?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remembered this thing from this lifeguard story that we people used to tell. And I looked it up. It was like a pool party in New Orleans, celebrating a summer without a single drowning. A non-lifeguard guest, right, drowned in entirely unnoticed in the deep end, despite having over 100 certified lifeguards in attendance.
That's wild,
right?
Like,
so the lifeguards.
It's a miracle because
it's a miracle.
You cannot explain it. Yeah.
It's a sense of wonder. It's like, wow, that's insane, right? Yeah, it is. And I remember, like, we sort of talked about that. It's actually an incident that happened. New Orleans, they had lifeguards had a party for celebrating nobody drowning, and during that party, a non-lifeguard guest died in the deep end, and no one saved them.
Which you would not expect to happen, but that's what makes it remarkable. We have to remember stories like this, whether it's the good miracles or the bad miracles, there's a selection bias. If it weren't remarkable, no one would tell the story. If I'd turned the key and my radiator hadn't exploded, that would be an equally significant event. The car would have worked perfectly and I drove it home, but it wouldn't be noteworthy because that's what we expect. It's because the unexpected happened that made it a story. And if you live long enough, you're going to generate a few of those, the weird shit's going to happen. And you'll hear about that to the exclusion of the non-weird stuff because nobody talks about the weird stuff because there's nothing remarkable there. Megan Fox mentions call the dealership and say, hey, your car's straight. It was in their parking lot. The car was like right in front. They pulled it up and they had it ready and everything, all nice and shiny with the license plates on. I got in, turned the key, and the radiator exploded right there. And they were like, we'll have our mechanic fix that for you. We're very, very sorry, but I had to leave the car there, and it happened to be a Friday, and so the mechanic wouldn't be in until Monday, and it was a whole thing. But if it hadn't happened that way, it wouldn't make a story,
Oh, here's one. This is awful. I'm so sorry. I apologize in advance. But apparently, after surviving a plane crash landing as a teenager in San Francisco, a young girl managed to escape the burning aircraft only to be run over and killed by a responding rescue truck on the runway.
Oh, no.
That is insane.
That kind of shit it's unbelievable, and but enough people and enough time, it does happen,
Right.
It's freaking crazy. And so that's pretty much how I come to understand all of the various things that happen in my life that I describe as miracles. They're memorable because they're beyond the pale levels of remarkable, but that doesn't mean there's magic involved.
Right.
But even so, I'm willing to grant, sure, miracles. Show me which God is behind it, or gods, whatever. I'm open, I'll grant the miracles, but nobody can show me their God is responsible. And so I'm still here on the outside of all the religions going, which one? They all look identical to me as far as the veracity of their claims. It's all just claims and assertions. Show me which one is true. Show me your God did the thing. Your God gave me the near-death experience, but didn't actually kill me, or made sure I was able to get to an emergency room and have my guts put back in so I didn't die. Like, that was still doctors doing that. There was no magic involved, but like, it was far from a given I would get to a hospital, that sort of thing.
Right. Yeah.
Show me it was your God. And nobody has been able to do that. So,
Nope.
£100 in it. 1 + 1 = 2. If on the third morning I find 50 quid, what do I say? That the laws of arithmetic have been broken, or the laws of England? Clearly, I say the laws of England have been broken. How do I know? Because the laws of arithmetic have not been broken. It's our recognizing of what normally happens that helps us to see an exception. Now, if I were claiming that the body of Jesus rose from the dead by processes, natural processes going on in the grave 5 minutes before we happened, yes, that would be wrong. But I'm not claiming that. What Christians claim is that the God that created the universe and built the regularity.
Hold it. You said that it's hold on, because you said that no natural laws were broken, but you're not saying that it's natural that this happens. That is contradictory. You can't say it's part of the natural world and then say, well, do I say that body rising is natural? No. What?
It's I mean, the fact he believes in Jesus isn't even the subject of this debate. It's can science explain everything? But you knew it was going to go to Jesus because they set it up that way. They have an apologist and a known atheist, but it's not actually relevant to the debate, but whatever. I do note that early apologists foresaw this specific difficulty that people don't come back from the dead, and we know they don't because they haven't, and they still don't, which is why they wrote into the Gospels that Jesus's damaged body that was decaying for days magically evaporated, and Jesus had a new body. His spiritual essence had recorporealized, like he did a Doctor Who regeneration. He had a different face. Nobody recognized him, you know? So they're explaining away the irreconcilable natural difficulty by invoking an additional miracle. He didn't just come back from the dead. He grew a whole new body.
Right. Well,
but I do have an explanation.
I just dislike his arithmetic thing where he's saying, oh, if I receive $50 back, has the laws of England been broken or the laws of arithmetic been broken? And it's like, yeah, it's kind of like that, but you're claiming that this has happened. And like he's sort of trying to say, hey, just because a person comes back from the dead, it doesn't mean the laws of nature have been broken. It just means that the laws that we're aware of have been broken. But you're claiming something that no one's ever seen. People get wrong change all the time, right? People get money all the time. Nobody gets like a $50 note back, right? Like a note that a number that's never been formulated before. That's what you're claiming, that someone rose from the dead, right? Something that has never been observed in nature before or since or ever by anybody. And you're claiming it happened to you and then saying, well, the laws of arithmetic haven't been broken. Well, yeah, they have. Like, it's a terrible analogy because he's claiming just like getting, the laws of England are broken all the time. You know, you go and take a bike, you're breaking the laws of it. That happens every single day. And lots of people witness it because a lot of people are busted for stolen bikes, right? You know, like you're talking about something that's never been seen ever. And you're saying, hey, it doesn't mean it broke the laws of nature. Yeah, it kind of does. But to equate that with simply law breaking of England's laws, which happens every fucking day and tons of people see it, is just a ridiculous analogy. It's nonsensical. This is the kind of thing that sounds good to an edgy teen in university. Like it really is. But when you actually drill down to it, you sound like an idiot.
But sea turtles, mate.
Sea turtles. Okay.
I'm like, it's a unicorns, but let's take it one step removed back. It just
right.
Capable.
Pure speculation.
Wait a minute. No, this
not worth listening.
This isn't speculation.
Well, let's listen and then you respond, Peter.
Peter, it's dead easy to say it's not worth listening to. You tempt me to say that about some of the things you say, but I'm not going to do that because it seems to me it's very important to listen to what Christianity claims before you judge.
Now it's getting into the meta, and we can explain why it's not worth listening to. Like I said, like you can't equate the laws of nature to the laws of a nation, because the laws of the nation, I can go and break them right now, right? I can go next door and steal my neighbor's doormat, and I've broken the laws of a nation, right? But, when challenged, you can't break the laws of nature, sir. So you can't equate the two. Like, it's just a terrible analogy. He's conflating laws of nature with, legislative laws, which is just a mistake because one is prescriptive and the other one is descriptive. Like it is so fucking stupid. He's right. It's just you won't let him explain why it's nonsensical.
Yeah, this is the second time John has talked and talked and talked and said absurd things, and Peter's like, "Can I fucking address some of this?" And
Right.
Justin's like, "No, no, let him finish, and then you
Let
can
him finish.
respond." Like,
'Cause he's
it's
gish
really
galloping.
strongly favoring John here.
He's gish galloping as well. He's bringing up multiple subjects, just linking them one after another, and Atkins will not have the time to address all of them.
Yeah, it's a bit issue. See, we often recommend notes. Peter would have
Yes.
an easier time if he made notes, but it's also harder in this situation because they're like in chair. It's a
Well,
mess.
I don't think this was supposed to be a debate. I think it was supposed to be just a sit-down conversation. But, you know, if somebody is going to have a sit-down conversation, it needs to be a back and forth. You can't just monopolize time like Lennox is and have the moderator go, well, let's just listen to everything you've got to say. But the problem is that he set this up as, oh, this is for my book kind of thing. So, I mean, I'm sure Atkins is painfully aware that the only reason this is happening is because Lennox wants to flog a book.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the banners are in the background, is the cover
Yeah.
of the book. It happens to be the same as the title of the debate, but like that's what it is.
And what is claimed is the God who creates the universe and sustains it is not subject to laws as if they were laws of a land. He set up the regularities and he can feed a new event into them. And the claim is, and with this I finish, that God raised Christ from the dead by an input of colossal power.
Oh, Jesus.
Absolutely wonderful. Okay, so if I set up a new country, I'm the creator of the country and the originator of the laws, but I make the laws, you know, laws, and like say I make robbery illegal and then I go and rob a bank. Just because I'm the creator doesn't mean I can just like ignore the laws. And that is the laws of a nation.
Yes.
His example doesn't work even on the mortal scale, let alone the universal.
But he's sort of trying to say that he set the laws up to say it's illegal to rob a bank unless you're the person that made the law.
And
that's not how laws work.
Yeah, I'm speechless with the degree of absurdity, because it's like absurd in 4 different ways at the same time.
And you're also begging the question that God made laws kind of thing. How do you know your God made these laws? How do you know that they're not just how the universe works and the God came along later? How do you know that? You're just begging the question.
I mean, as one of the things that came up in my early career here on YouTube with counter-apologetics is, if the God in this case is eternal and has always existed, then how come we don't hear about him until, 3,000 years ago, give or take? Why are there older gods? It's kind of strange for an eternal being.
Well, you've got it, Peter, in one.
No, I mean,
that is the claim at the end of the day.
But I mean, everyone knows here that's nonsense. What you're inventing is an agent who can do anything he likes, he or she likes, I suppose you have to say these days. And so it is the laziest way of accounting for observations, sometimes observations that were never actually made. Religious explanations which resort to God did it are intellectually lazy. I won't use a stronger term than that, but I do think that they are lazy, because, I mean, what does it mean as an explanation? You lie there saying, oh, God did it, and everyone says, oh, I understand now. Religious explanations are easy to accept by the unthinking. Science is difficult to accept because it involves a lot of thought. You really have to tease out the processes by which an event occurs. You can't simply say, and God did it. You've got to go through in biology.
it's so much worse than that.
Yeah.
Because when you've got people, as I've often said since the beginning of the channel, when you pretend to have the answer, you stop looking for the real answer.
Yeah.
And so if you're running around saying God did it, not only are you not looking for what actually happened, but you're putting at least passive and sometimes active pressure on the people who are. Case in point, when scientists started to observe that the earth went around the sun, the God did it people started burning them.
Yeah. And I mean, even a more modern example, when you start being Robert Patterson blowing away the pandemic with the breath of God, you know, really what he should be doing is funding, like putting money and donating to scientific medical virologists who are looking for an answer to it. You know, like, but he thinks that blowing on his microphone is, you know, that's not even just does nothing. He's also blowing out a bunch of germs everywhere.
Mm-hmm. What fun.
Fucking thing is airborne, and he thinks blowing is gonna solve the problem. Is just ridiculous.
It reminds me of one of the viral videos that went viral shortly after that. It's weird talking about a viral video pertaining to a virus, but whatever the case, it was one of Greg Glock's followers who got pulled over because she'd like just been somewhere without a mask, and the police officer was like, we're under health restrictions. You have to wear masks in public places, ma'am. And she goes, no, I'm covered in the blood of Jesus. And I'm just like, what if Jesus has COVID too? Like, that's not going to help you, bestie.
Even worse, he could have, you know, AIDS or something. He could have HIV. Then what were you going to do?
Yeah. Or some disease from 2,000 years ago that you have no immune protection
That's
against,
true.
you know?
Yeah. No, that is the problem. That people think that the problems in this world are going to be all sorted out by God. I mean, you see it in some people who just cannot wait for things to collapse and go to shit so the world ends so they can get to heaven. They can't wait. They are so eager for it. And it is actually worrying. It's worrying that the worse things get, the happier these people are. That is a problem.
Yeah. Narcissism and parasitism and delusion and all sorts of, we need to give these rich people therapy. Like, fucking hell.
You delve down into, if you like, the chemistry of the organism. In chemistry, you delve down into the physics of the underlying processes. And I accept maybe in physics, you have to delve down into the underlying mathematical fabric of whatever I mean by that. It's jolly hard work, and you've got to work on it. But it's more satisfying when you get to the end of an explanation than that extraordinarily lazy way of pretending to explain by saying, and abracadabra, God did it.
Right, like, there's so much that pisses me off about that. Like, a Christian comes along and goes, God did it. And then a Muslim comes along and says, no, my God did it. And then a Buddhist comes along and goes, no, Buddha did it. And then, you know, a spiritual Zoroastrian comes along and goes, Mazda did it. And et cetera, et cetera. How do we tell who's telling the truth when no one has an actual explanation? But what do you do when the scholar, the scientist, the sage comes along and does it? And you're like, oh, are you a god? Certain Ghostbusters would say you should say yes. But
I was going to say, yeah.
If you stop saying God did it, you can find out what the real answer is. Maybe.
Maybe, but that's the whole point. It can it find out what everything is? Yeah, and he's got a really good point, right? Like, it is a good point, but it's not actually addressing Lennox's analogy. And I really hope that he ties it to Lennox's analogy in one point, sort of saying, hey, you know, laws of the nature are not like laws of a country. Anybody can break laws of a country. Laws of a country don't prevent you from actually doing anything. What they say is, if you do this, this is going to be the punishment. You know, ideally, that's how they're formulated. They're prescriptive. They are, when this happens, this other thing is supposed to happen to that person, and this is the consequence of that action. But they don't actually stop you from, like, there's no physical thing stopping you. Whereas that's not what laws of nature are. They are literally how the world around us operates in a way that, you know, I can't just fly into the air and off to the moon kind of thing. Like, it's against the laws of nature. It doesn't mean that, oh, if I do that, I'm going to, you know, God's going to punish me. No, it's just I cannot do that. So they're totally different things. And I think it is really behooves them to point out why that analogy is so terrible.
Hopefully, we'll see. I don't know. He seems to be like more conversational and like, let's move the talk this way. We'll see. We'll see. Maybe he does.
That is intellectually corrupt.
Okay.
But Peter, that's confusing two different kinds of explanations.
Yes, indeed.
If you were to say about a motor car, Henry Ford did it.
Yeah,
and that's
it's confusing a good explanation with a bad explanation. That's right. Yeah, no, it's like there are two kinds: good explanations and bad explanations. Now, if you're asking what constitutes a good explanation, I would say one with explanatory power, right? Like, so you've really got two things in explanations. You've got explanatory power and explanatory scope. Scope is how much it accounts for, right? Like, we can, like, gravity has a lot of explanatory scope, right? Like, it explains why planets form, why they take the paths around it. It explains why, if I drop something, you know, or why a large object that I drop is going to hit a lot harder than a small object, right? It explains a ton of things. But it also has explanatory power, like the specificity of it. Why does that occur? Well, it's mass, that attracts other mass. You know, it's got a lot of specificity. God has infinite explanatory scope. Like, you can explain literally anything with a God, and it's got absolutely no explanatory power. All you're saying is magic. That's it. It doesn't actually explain anything. Yeah, like, you know, it's got no specifics to it. And you can tell that because someone down the road can say Allah, and another person can say Buddha, and another person can say whatever they want, you know, like Gaia, the goddess of fertility or something. And you cannot tell the difference between the explanation. They each have the same scope and same power as one another.
Yep. It's like, okay, so you may as well say nothing. I mean, if you can take your explanation and substitute in the tooth fairy and have it work exactly the same, you are saying nothing.
Yeah.
All you have to say, then I would agree with you. But the point is, as I sit here and read your books and explaining chemistry and all this kind of thing, I say, this is wonderful. This is not contradicting the God explanation, because the God explanation is saying that you, as a chemist, only have a universe to study because God created it in the first place. But he's not competing. In fact, interestingly, and this has always been a bit of a mandate for me, the very early chapters of Genesis, God commands human beings to name the animals. He starts off taxonomy, which is the basic intellectual discipline.
This is
In other words, he said,
unlinked to what we're talking about here. Oh, but God told people to name the animals, so that just shows that your science is based upon what God said. What the actual fuck? Like, seriously, this is a red herring if ever I've seen it. This has got nothing to do with the conversation. Like, because he's saying, oh, because I have an explanation that's just as good as your explanation, because they don't cross over. They don't, you know, one's an explanation up here and another's an explanation down here. Well, then your explanation is fucking useless, isn't it? Because it doesn't actually explain anything.
The tea is boiling because I wanted tea. The kettle is boiling. You know what?
Okay.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Because Bertrand Russell's ghost wanted tea.
Oh. Oh.
You go and do science, and you'll find it utterly fascinating. So I think you're arguing at a straw god, and not a straw man.
You don't know whether God was starting off science. He might have got so bored with his creation that he wanted to amuse them. So
Well, who's speculating now?
yeah, I am.
Yes. Okay.
I think any speculation.
I like that term straw god. I think I may steal that to mean, you know, a god who could do anything, but demonstrably does nothing.
Yeah, I suppose
But
so.
uses the
I
word
suppose
God.
so.
Yeah. A vast piracy.
Is intellectually corrupt.
I mean,
But this is absurd.
There is no God.
Can I-
No, be quiet. There is not one jot of evidence for God.
Oh, I think there's a
Only in
lot of
lazy
evidence
minds
for
is there
God.
evidence for God.
Look,
Okay,
look
so
at this.
let me
Look
just-
at this
summarize.
bullshit. Like, as soon as he starts speaking, the moderator interrupts him to go back to Lennox. And then Lennox is interrupting him. Like, I get where Atkins is coming from, saying, no, be quiet. Like, seriously, I've just started talking, and already the moderator's interrupting him to say, well, let him respond to that. Like, can the guy get out of fucking thought? This is really frustrating, because not only is the opposition interrupting and the moderator's letting it in, the moderator's interrupting him. Like, seriously.
He's not telling John, quiet down, let him respond.
Right.
No, he's saying, no, John wants to talk. You need to zip it, you know? That's not moderation, Justin. Damn it.
Lazy, corrupt, and any mention of God is simply going down that path. Why for you is that not the kind of lazy, corrupt explanations you're
Well,
talking about?
first of all, take science itself. Why am I passionate about science? Why do I believe science can be done?
Do you believe science can be done, Mr. Miracle? The world was created 6,000 years ago, and all advanced creatures were poofed into being, man? Do you believe in science? Really?
Well,
I'm
you know,
curious.
I think, well, he obviously believes that the scientific methods can be performed in a reliable way. And I get what you're saying. Like, it shouldn't be reliable if a god is miracling. Like, if you're saying, hey, there's a sense of wonder, then I don't know why you would be able to do science in a reliable way, because at any point a sense of wonder they could absolutely fail. I don't know why you would believe in uniformity of nature. But apart from that, I think that, yeah, no, he might believe, hey, we can do science and it's reliable and we get results and it achieves stuff, like on a practical level. But I don't know what this has got to do with the God actually being true. Like, what Atkins is trying to point out is there's absolutely no evidence for God. And he's sort of saying, oh, I think there's lots of it. What evidence? Because the resurrection is not a piece of evidence for a God. It's not.
Yeah. Like, how can you claim to be a fan of science when you're spending all your time trying to equivocate between claims and evidence? Like, a claim is not evidence. Like, as a mathematician, if you gave a student an equation and said solve for x, and the student just declared x was 2 and hadn't done any of the work, fuck, John, you wouldn't believe them.
Yeah.
In fact, you could do the work yourself and find out, oh no, that's actually not true. That is an incorrect answer. But no, you're over here saying, because in this one special case, different rules apply, I can just declare that it's 2, and that's scientific. It's fine somehow.
Because I believe that in some way the human mind in here has access to the natural world out there. Now, why do I believe that? And sometimes I ask my atheist friends, I've never asked Peter this, but so he's excused, but I have asked many of them. I said, what do you do science with? And they say and they're about to say mind, when they realize it's not politically correct to say mind. They say my brain. And I say, tell me.
Why is it not politically correct to say mind?
What? I think he's trying to poke, like, sort of attack non-dualism, like, you know, that your mind is just your brain. sort of thing, you know, so it's not political, but it's not politically correct. It's probably not, it may not be neurologically correct, but yeah, it's not even that, you know, like I think he's just arguing against a straw man, saying, hey, you can't say my mind because these atheists only believe in brains. And it's like, well, yeah, your mind is your consciousness. It's sort of an emergent thing from your brain, sure, but that doesn't mean we don't refer to it. What are you doing? Is it just me, or is Lennox bafflingly bad? Like, he is shockingly bad.
That's sort of my impression too. Is I don't know. I feel like he's doing almost a Dinesh kind of thing, where he's just throwing out like every kind of red herring to distract
Right.
and create smoke screens and shit. Like, it's not PC to say the word mind. Why? Like, you could just say mind or just say
Yeah.
brain. Why are you like gesturing at some imagined culture war that no one's ever heard of? What the fuck is this?
Yeah, and these weird ass analogies that make no sense whatsoever. These sort of almost a presuppositional, well, God made everything, so your thing is my God's thing. You know, it's just, it is, you know, I'm getting a sense of wonder from how terrible this guy is. Guess what? It's a miracle, according to him. It's a miracle, because I'm sitting here going, wow, this guy is terrible.
It's
I'm not surprised.
It is
like,
miraculous that he's advanced so far in life, although we can't explain it with science.
Yeah.
You see, you start out very rich and very privileged. You use that
Mhm.
privilege to procure for yourself a position at Oxford, and then you're a professor at Oxford, and doors just open for you because you've got
Right.
Oxford attached, you know?
Well, I don't think it's that it's from Oxford. It's that he's from Oxford and he's willing to bat for the young Earth creationist team, I think, is what has opened a lot of doors for him, you know, because they, you know, they kind of go for people who are respected in the academic community rather than people who are actually publishing material on the subject. Unfortunately.
I study math, so I like logic. Therefore, when I say logical things, they count as logic because I'm a mathematician. And also, as Sterling says, my God made your science, so checkmate, atheists.
Yeah. Yeah.
About your brain. And one man who's rather famous, he said to me, do you want the really short answer? I said, sure. My brain's the end product of a mindless, unguided process. So I looked at him and smiled and said, and you trust it? And then I asked,
that is a mischaracterization. I remember that conversation. Lennox was talking with Dawkins, who is a horrible person for different reasons.
Yes,
But in this particular conversation, he said to Dawkins, if you believe in evolution, you believe that your brain was created by an unguided yada, yada, yada process.
Not
And
unguided.
Dawkins said something to the effect of, well, it's rather more complicated than that. But sure. And then Lennox said, well, then why would you trust it? Like, I understand that he's like remembering something offhandedly and not trying to quote, but the intentional misrepresentation is still wrapped up in there, you know?
And yeah, you probably shouldn't 100% trust your own mind. That's the thing. Like, we want to, you know, if you come up with a dumb idea, I've come up with dumb ideas. I don't 100% trust my mind. I have confidence, a certain level of confidence in what I have. But sometimes if I get a wild idea, it's probably a good idea to run it by somebody, you know, somebody else, and see if they think it's a good idea or not.
It's why we do science, right? Like I was telling, well, I've told a couple of people in the last couple of days because a thing came up. There are 6 hypothesized ways to turn photons into electron and positron particle pairs. 5 of them have been tested. All 5 have won Nobel Prizes. I have a hypothesis for how to test the 6th way. but I need very expensive equipment to do it. I don't have my own particle collider, believe it or not. I'm probably wrong, because that's the scientific presupposition is here's this idea, I should test it and find out if I'm wrong, because I probably am. And that's sort of the difference, is when we come up with an idea, our brains can malfunction. We can miss something. We can miscalculate. We can jump to a conclusion. We by definition, we don't see blind spots, so we don't know if there's a blind spot, which is why we test things instead of just going, I'm right. I know the sixth way to make matter. Nobel Prize, please. You know?
Right. And this is the thing. Like, yeah, it's we use the scientific method because we don't 100% trust our own minds. We don't come up with an idea and say, well, that's correct no matter what the evidence says, or how unlikely it seems, or that I've got no evidence whatsoever for it, which is what he's doing. So maybe you shouldn't trust your own mind either and actually find some fucking evidence for it.
I really enjoy he's been folding and unfolding his glasses, and no shade. I mean, I tend to like twitch in my chair. I get a little fidgety, but like just the way he's literally doing the postulation thing that like he could not be any more pompous in this moment.
I've never seen, like, no, I probably have, but he is one of the people that will say stuff that makes no sense whatsoever, make analogies that are so false and incongruous with what the analogy is to, and just have complete confidence that he's said the most amazing sequence of logic while just sounding absurd. Like, it is so misplaced, his confidence in his own bloviation. I don't. It's insane. It's insane.
Yeah, that's the thing about him is his assumption of profundity just because he's verbose. That those two things do not go together.
Yeah.
This question, which I've asked many times. Suppose you knew your computer was the end product of a mindless, unguided process. Would you trust it? And I've always had the answer, no. And then I said,
well, you're talking to, first of all, the plural of anecdotes is not data. But if I had a computer that was produced by, like, say, machines that are, mindless,
Unguided,
for example,
and mindless,
I might test the computer. I might not assume it works, but I also wouldn't assume it doesn't. I'd say, oh, it's a computer. I understand what these things are and how they're supposed to work. Let's try it out. Let's push the power button and see if it actually turns on. Like,
if I had a computer that does exactly the same as it does, that my computer does in front of me right now, and it was made by a mindless, unguided process, then yes, I would trust it. Because it does shit. Like, it does all of this stuff reliably.
Like, human reproduction, sperm meets egg. Is he trying to suggest that the sperm has a mind, it has a will, it has a consciousness and sapience and so forth? It is a mindless, unguided process. And yet it produces viable humans. Oh, yes, it produces non-viable fetuses as well, but that's the only place viable fetuses come from. Okay, not the only place. We can do in vitro. We can, like, take a sperm and, like, physically inject it into an egg now, but yikes.
Yeah.
See, you have a problem. In other words, your atheist materialist stance undermines my trust in the rationality I need to do science. Now, if you flip the coin, modern science exploded in the 16th and 17th centuries, and its pioneers,
look
Galileo, Kepler, Newton.
Okay, look at this complete gish gallop. He's already made a point, like, oh, if you don't trust your own mind, how can you do science? Because science is collaborative. Okay, it's collaborative, not individuals doing it. If individuals were just doing science, we would have the most stupid theories out there ever, because there's, as try as you might, you can never eliminate your own biases. In fact, there is problems with scientists getting onto this hypothesis and they just believe it's, they want it to be true. That's what the process is for. It's to eliminate that. So no, we don't do that. We don't just go, well, my mind has come up with this thing, it's automatically correct. No, it's collaborative. That's the whole point. But now he's going on to, this other thing. Moderator, stop him. He's gish galloping, and Atkins hasn't said 2 words. He's like, oh, this is nonsense, goes on to explain why, and he's cut off by the moderator. What the hell is going on here?
I know, we're getting a fucking speech. Like, why did he even invite Peter? Like, just have Justin Brierly, like, just go down as he just speechifies.
Yep.
My goodness.
Clark Maxwell, and so on, were all believers in God, most of them Christian. And the point is,
most of them Christian, but not all. What? It's possible to do science without being a Christian? Fascinating.
No, I think that most scientists are actually atheist. There's a huge amount of atheist scientists. Atheism among scientists is well, it depends on if you're talking about world or US. Okay, gotcha. Either world or US. Got you. %41 don't in the US. Everything that's in world, though, it's actually a lot shorter, I think. Over 80% of the world, right? Yeah, it just says US. I'm not sure that applies over worldwide, though.
I'm not sure off the top of my head.
I mean,
but the point
US
is you don't have to be Christian.
No, absolutely not. And plus, 51% being religious in America is not something to boast about. Like, most of us are Christian. Actually, it's 51% believe in some form of deity or higher power. So that may not actually be true.
Yeah, there's a lot of agnostics leaning towards the theistic side. I mean, hell, based on what I was talking about earlier, that I'm willing to grant miracles, and I'm just not sure which God, if any, proposed by humans is the one to be given credit for it. You could put me in that camp, you know?
So I'm looking at the Pew Research Center. So this is comparison between scientists and general public. So I'll share my screen. Actually, this might be interesting because what year is this from? Do you know?
I think no, it couldn't be 2020. I thought it was 7 years old when I snagged it, but
right.
I could just look up what year the book came out, and oh, I have to take the thing off the stage before I can add the other thing on the stage.
Okay. Sorry. Can't you
It's
just
all
switch
right.
between them? I can just
It
switch
used to let me. I could just add one and it would automatically bump the other. But no, we have to take the one. Whatever.
This is religious affiliation among the general public and scientists. So that's sort of general public. But among scientists, so you could say that this is 2009. There's atheist, but that's different than agnostic in this thing. Nothing in particular is also different. So, and there's other religions. So it's actually less than half Christian if you take out the Jewish other religion. which is 18%. So I think what he's done is take the percentage that believes in a higher power and then said, well, that 51% that believes in a higher power is Christian, which is not true. That is bullshit. I'm sorry, it just is.
That's how apologetics do their thing, though, is they're like, oh, but this group could all be Christian, so I'll just claim them all as Christian,
Yeah, so this is all scientists up the top, religious belief among things. So all scientists, if you add up those who believe in God and who don't believe in God but do believe in a universal spirit or higher power, you do get 51%, right? But people that don't believe in God are not Christians, and even the ones that do believe in God may not be Christians either. So that is blatantly untrue that most of them are Christian.
Oops.
Yeah, it's and even if you're counting everyone that believes in a higher power as Christian, it's still 51%. It's just over half the population of scientists, which is kind of ridiculous. Like that's stupid. That's not really a convincing majority. That's just over half. And this was in 2009.
Mhm.
Somehow I doubt the numbers of religious scientists have gone up since then.
Yeah, and additionally, even if it were true, that's still at best a bandwagon fallacy. It's popular,
Yeah,
therefore
sure.
it's real,
Yeah.
So it's like layers of bullshit.
Yeah, because we're not saying, hey, a majority worldwide of scientists don't believe in God, therefore there's no God. No one's making that argument, right? But he's happy to make the argument majority of science, which he's incorrect about, of course. He's either misunderstood or lying about, but he's sort of arguing that a majority in America believe in Jesus, so therefore Jesus rose from the dead. What a ridiculous argument.
Mm-hmm. A majority of flat earthers believe the earth is flat. Therefore.
Well, it would be like saying a majority of scientists believe that the earth is flat. But don't get me wrong, like scientists can believe that all they want. They're not putting it into their work. They're not saying, hey, here is the scientific evidence. It's just an appeal to, it's kind of, yeah, you're right. It's sort of an ad populum fallacy and a sort of appeal to authority, both in one.
It's like saying the majority of scientists prefer steak for dinner. Therefore, steak is objectively the correct choice for dinner. That has nothing to do with how they do the science.
Yeah, I mean that is a subjective thing rather than objective, whether God exists or not, right? Like that's a bit different. But it's just stupid. It's just absolutely ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of ridiculous, Jester says, no one tell Ember that she's the reincarnation of Nil. I don't know what that means, but everyone remember not to tell me.
Yeah, and so something reminds me, why should we take whether a sports scientist believes in, and don't get me wrong, sports science is important. It's sort of studying biomechanics, it's studying, athleticism, it's studying how sort of metabolism works and all. It's very important. But I'm not going to take a sports scientist saying, hey, God's real as a scientific fact. Why would you?
Why doesn't God heal my ACL? My ACL is one of the few parts of my body that actually doesn't require healing at the moment, but it came up in an earlier conversation IRL. Someone else I know tore their ACL and needs to do.
It's nasty.
It's because I need to do physical therapy, and they were like, well, got to do physical therapy because of torn ACL. That's not important.
Yeah, that's
the
nasty.
point is, like, if a sports science person was very cool, your God can heal things. Why doesn't your God heal the thing? Like, it's not even a violation of the laws under your system. So why not, Avast and so forth.
thank you for indulging me in my statistics to show
Oh,
that
absolutely.
Lennox is full of shit.
Mm-hmm. It's true. It's true.
It was their belief in God that didn't hinder their science. It was the motor that drove it. So for two reasons. One, the legitimizing of doing.
I can't speak for all these other assorted people, but Maxwell, not so much. Like his curiosity into how electromagnetism worked was because he kept finding weird things and wanted to see where it led. Like, to my knowledge, God wasn't even part of the equation, let alone the fuel for why. But I don't know, maybe John has seen like a secret religious journal that Maxwell left behind that I never found. I don't know.
I mean, he's sort of shifted position again back to sort of God and creating the universe, because I know that a lot of naturalists who did believe in God sort of said, well, they want to investigate how God did all these things. I think that really does underline just how much of a non-explanation God is. Because if you're saying, hey, I still believe in God and he was the one that created electromagnetism, but I want to find out how he did it, it really just underscores that God isn't an explanation. And that is the fundamental premises of the Enlightenment, that God isn't an explanation.
Yeah, we have no need for that hypothesis, as Laplace put it. But yeah, you there's no mechanism, there's nothing you can use, so that it doesn't actually explain. But even if Lennox admitted that religion is not a useful explanation for, anything, that still has nothing to do with the actual question. And this is one of the reasons that creationists are so fucking frustrating, because they try to dichotomize everything. If science can't explain a thing, therefore the random thing I believe in must be true. But then, no, you still have to demonstrate your own claim separately. In fact, if you could, you wouldn't need to pick on science. You could just show people and they'd believe you.
Doing science at all is one of the reasons I believe in God. God as an explanation makes more sense. It has explanatory power. The atheist explanation, as even some atheists like Thomas Nagel these days are beginning to see, undermines confidence and rationality.
So, John.
No. Like, how do you get there? It's like...
Do you see the Gish Gallop?
Assertions.
We're so far away from his original point, right? We are so far away from his original point that the resurrection had evidence to it, and that the miracles that God does are within the laws of nature. We're so far away from that point. He Gish gallops. He basically puts out, like, he is a Gish galloper of the highest quality, and the moderator just lets him get away with it.
I don't know that we've seen a few of Justin Brierley's debates over the years. He did the one between Alex O'Connor and Ben Shapiro, which mostly he didn't actually have to moderate, because despite Ben's tremendous drawbacks, he's quite capable of matching a person's energy for a conversation.
Yeah.
And so there's that. I mean, he does have some media training after all, running a media company the way he does. But he also did in his radio studio the debate between Frank Turek and young Alex O'Connor, and for that he did a little moderation, but for the most part Alex was quite content to let Frank make all the points he wanted and then just knock them down like dominoes, like ting 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 ting. But still, like, Justin, when his debates go well, it's not because of his moderation abilities usually,
Yeah.
This argument essentially then, Peter, that the very fact we can do science points to a rational logic behind the universe and behind our ability to understand it, that is I suppose, fits better with the idea of a God
that's what I'm saying,
rather than the idea that this all is by chance, it's a random accident.
For lazy minds, that's certainly true. The trouble is, that the philosophers are pessimists, basically, because they get paid to doubt, and they doubt the capacity of human understanding. Scientists are optimists. They think that given time, given collaboration, hugely important, they will arrive at explanations that do not require the insertion of words like God. God is no more than a word, frankly, which is used to disguise the inability to comprehend something. So theologians obfuscate. We've heard that in good measure this evening, if I may say so. While theologians obfuscate, scientists illuminate. And we are showing that somehow or other, through evolution, only through evolution, we have developed brains which are capable of extraordinary understanding. Now, if I can take a moment just to wrap a warning around that at the moment.
Oh my God, Peter. Like,
Yeah,
you're
it's
finally
not-
being given the
Yeah.
ability and time to talk, and you're like, let me say something that has no bearing on anything, but first let me craft a parenthetical for the thing that has nothing. Focus, dude. You have like maybe a minute before Justin cuts you off again.
Yeah. Well, I think he's addressing the whole idea that you can't trust your brain because, you know, it was unguided and stuff. And that was the original point that came up. Whether we'll get to the next one, I'm not 100% sure, which was sort of a lot of scientists are Christians, which the irrelevance is just staggering. But I think he's sort of getting to, well, yeah, we do trust our brains and they're capable of quite understanding. They're quite often wrong as well. That's the whole point. So I really hope he gets onto that because they're so often wrong, we need reliable methodologies. And look at all the different religions. It's not reliable because, there's scientists that are Christian, but there's scientists that are Muslim, there's scientists that are this and that and the other and all things in between. Like, it's not a reliable methodology. It's sort of devolved into, is there a God though, rather than can science explain everything?
Yeah, and I think that was sort of the rough intent behind the conversation, because it is ultimately just to sell John's book, which is an apologetic book, not a science book.
Yep.
And that's the answer to your question, Jester, by the way, is why Lennox's name is on the wall. It's because it's the cover of John's book, which is what he's trying to
Buy
sell.
my DVDs.
Yep, that's the whole thing, the whole ball of wax. But
I
like,
should get some DVDs to sell.
I know, I've been thinking about, because it's been harder and harder for me to do shows, taking the time in between to like maybe write another book, because I haven't written a book under my current name.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and I'm like, I could just like, I don't know. It's also crossed my mind to take, there's only really one book that I'd really like to bring from my past life. It was my first novel. But if I like just update my name, then it'll like be very clear what my dead name was, and that creates its own difficulties. So I don't know.
Yeah, no,
I don't know. I probably should just
yeah.
write something new entirely.
Okay.
Maybe. We'll see. I mean, the first one I wrote, okay, in fairness, I wrote the first draft for NaNoWriMo. I finished the first draft in November, but then I spent another 6 months editing and fixing because I was writing so fast. But I mean, theoretically, I could have another manuscript done by the end of November. You know what? I don't think I have that much time, so never mind. But it's still crossed my mind anyway. Yeah.
Do we have brains that are big enough to understand absolutely everything? It's a legitimate question. Or are we, like a dog in a room, which a dog could not understand classical physics, although we humans think we can understand classical physics. But we have to confront the possibility that our brains are not.
He's touching on a very interesting take that I've never seen an apologist go for. All of reality, you could argue, it goes back to the universal brain thing, but from their point of view, it has to be understood to work. No human brain can understand all of it. All of us together can barely understand a significant fraction of it. So there must be a supremely, stupendously gigantic mind to hold all of it. Because, like, you know, I know more physics than the average bear, but I could not, if I spent my entire life, understand all of just physics, let alone biology and psychology and medicine and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's just the limits of how far humans have gotten so far, you know?
Yes, but you've sort of got to, like, there is absolutely no one person is going to understand that. That's why we specialize. But over all of humanity, could we understand everything really well? Like it's sort of like education, right? You'll get the basics of stuff, and then people specialize in a certain field and they understand a lot about that field. You know, I still think that is humanity understanding it, even though no one human understands all of it. And we also have the added advantage of being able to inscribe our knowledge upon stuff. We record our knowledge. It's a huge advantage.
We can graffiti our knowledge on the corpses of trees.
Right. And sometimes we graffiti nonsense on the corpses of trees. Please refer to the book being illustrated in the back of this picture.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. But yeah, our knowledge is not just collaborative, but generative. It across both generations and creating new knowledge. It leads to more new knowledge. But also there's this. The milestone that we use as a hallmark for who should be awarded a terminal degree, and often it's a doctorate, but whatever the case may be, is you have to contribute something to advance human knowledge. Like,
right,
you can write all the papers you like, and that's wonderful.
Yes.
But to be awarded the top level degree, you have to add something new to the library.
Yep.
Yeah,
that's what a thesis is. It's a new idea put into the library. Yes.
And that's, you don't have to understand all of your subject. You just add something new.
Not strong enough to understand absolutely everything. And I think we might even be moving towards an agreement there. But there's different kinds of understanding, as John was saying, but of a different kind from what John was saying. Take quantum mechanics. You can formulate equations in quantum mechanics and solve them to an extraordinary degree of precision. But there are aspects of quantum mechanics, like quantum entanglement and so on, which we might never be able to understand because we humans have been brought up in a world of classical events. Usually, I mean, as we grew up from the trees, we found that the world was largely classical. It's in the 20th century, 21st century, that we've discovered the quantum behavior of this extraordinary kind. Now, it might well be that our brains simply are not equipped to understand the quantum phenomena that we are discovering. But we can still do the equations. We can still solve it to arbitrary precision. I think that means that we, in a sense, have understood the fabric of reality, let's put it that way. Even though,
well,
have we explained it? Have we explained it? Because that sort of sounds like a concession on the other side, that if we can't, have we explained something if we have no capacity to actually understand it? And I think I would say yes. I think I would say that if we have the equations, like for instance, we explained gravity with Newton's theory of gravity, even though we didn't quite understand what it was. We still explained it. And I think that mathematics is kind of the purest way to explain something. You know, you're explaining what it does to the precision that you can, you know, predict what's going to happen. You know, a year from now, when you shoot an artillery shell in certain weather, you know, using Newtonian, you can explain it. You can explain what that thing will do. And I think that that is the best explanation of all.
Yeah, it's literally predictive. It's input output. I mean, you could argue that it turns reality into an algorithm, but really it's just showing the parts that matter and the parts that don't. I think that's what Asimov was driving at with Foundation and his idea of psychohistory, is that there are a lot of variables, but a finite number of variables that are useful for predictive purposes in certain circumstances.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm going to get really off in the weeds on that, so I'll just leave that for now.
So we can't intuit the fabric of reality because our brains are constructed classically and not quantum mechanically. So I agree that there may be limitations to our understanding, but they are understanding of that kind.
I have no difficulty with.
Oh, right. I was going to say, it's interesting that they both just handed it over to John right there after he, you know, whatever. It's not important. That's not really a great explanation. Neither of these men are physicists.
Right.
I think appealing to quantum equations is he's kind of extending an olive branch to John, because equations are a mathematician thing. But the quantum part leaves room for that spooky action at a distance where you can cram in the supernatural.
Right.
But
right. Yeah,
that's
I don't
not
think he should be doing an
really how
olive
things
branch.
work.
I don't think he should be you know, doing an olive branch at all.
Yeah, I obviously I tend to agree. He should be like taking apart the bullshit John has said, but whatever.
That, because the one thing I would never say is quantum mechanics is extremely difficult. I don't understand quantum entanglement, therefore God did it. I would never dream of reacting like that, because trying to understand
That's exactly what he does. He says you don't know how the universe started. Well, God did it. He wouldn't just dream of doing that. He does it all the time. Wow.
I mean, it's so fucking wild, because like he's just made this big deal out of being Mr. Logic Man, and quantum entanglement violates the law of identity in a certain way, because it's you know, saying that it's not just A equals B, but that A and B are the same thing, and it's whatever. I'm not going to get into it right now.
The job of science, that is the job of physics, and you keep going, as you suggest, until you run out of brain power. You see, God answers a different kind of question which spurs science on, it doesn't inhibit it. But now, Peter, one little question for you.
I think this is a very important point, that science is a motivation. God is a motivation for science. A motivation for science, and I think we ought to spend a moment on that. I think God is also a great motivation for art as well.
Yes.
Wonderful pictures, wonderful music, wonderful literature, all induced by belief in God. But it doesn't mean that the God actually exists. It simply means that you believe that he exists. So
before Justin cuts him off here, this is a really important point, because Muslim artists, Greek artists making, you know, the Pantheon and the Parthenon and all the other Anons, they made the art based on their belief, or at least their understanding of the stories. It doesn't mean those gods exist. And I think they would have to agree with those, because they believe their god's real and these others aren't.
Right.
But the other people still make art, though. I mean, honestly, some of the ancient Greek plays, and I realize we've lost most of them, thanks Dark Ages, but the ones that still persist into the present are still, in many ways, when it comes to how humans act and how humans think, some of the most profound psychological understanding ever put to, well, stone tablets probably, but let's say pen to paper. Like they didn't even know the word psychology, but they describe emotions and motivations in a very primal way that strips away so much of the bullshit of being civil and so forth. Like, you don't need Christianity to see truth in the artistic sort of way, might be what Peter's trying to get at.
Yeah. And it doesn't say anything whether it doesn't say anything whether it's true or not, right? Like, so a lot of people do art based upon the Power Rangers, right? Like, you don't need the thing to be real to do art on it and inspire people to do artwork. We know that all kinds of stuff has inspired people to do art, and it's not. It's like saying, well, there's been some amazing stuff done on Slender Man, so it's got to exist. My guy, what?
Just today, Dr. Ben, you know,
Yes.
our friend and yours, he
Yes.
passed through West Virginia and he stopped at the Mothman statue. There's a statue of Mothman, therefore Mothman real?
Right. Yeah. Like, I feel like he's just confusing, you know, inspirational abstraction with, you know, some kind of supernatural muse that has to actually exist. Why?
Mhm. Yeah. In fact, inspiration is probably one of the closest things to a divine power that humans have, because even though we can get into the neurology of the stimulus and the mechanisms and the chemical functions and so forth, flashes of inspiration are as close to acausal as we've been able to detect in anything not at the, you know, radioactive decay level. It just stuff just pops into our head, and because we have apparently some kind of agency, we're able to actualize some of them to a greater or lesser extent.
Right.
It's pretty neat.
Yeah.
To say that the very book you wrote, the statement you used at the beginning is, I think, from Bacon, and who was, of course, a believer.
Yeah, well, they all were in those days.
So is that what you're saying, that in a sense, whatever John says about the religious sort of faith of the pioneers of science, it was just the nature of things?
To them, it was real, and indeed, it did motivate.
I mean, it's such a
excellent.
it's such a stupid argument. It's like saying, you know, 100% of the people who came up with calculus spoke English. Therefore, English is objectively the correct language. Like, no, he just happened to be, you know, and first of all, Newton's not the only one who came up with calculus, but that's a separate argument. The point is the fact that Newton happened to speak English in no way adds any extra value to English as a superior language. The fact Newton happened to be Christian, asterisk, because he was very much into occult shit, but let's just say Christian, it doesn't mean that his discovery of calculus also lends credence to the value of Christianity. It's so dumb.
And I mean, our maths, and this would be an important point to bring up, because, you know, Lennox is a mathematician, right? His field is mathematics, and our numerals are based upon Arabic. They were invented by people that believed in Allah. So should he be a Muslim then?
Yeah, I mean, he's a student of algebra, so
yeah. Like, without algebra, there wouldn't be any calculus. You know, it's so nonsensical. Like, he would see the nonsense of going, well, because maths was kind of invented, at least algebra, and even our numeral system was invented by Muslims, that, you know, in some way that means mathematics is based, then Allah is real. He would say that's nonsense. But then he sort of goes on to say, well, most of the scientists were, you know, who did naturalism in the early Enlightenment were Christian, so therefore God exists. No, that makes total sense. What?
Yeah, it's freaking it's wild. I should clarify, the internal critic in my brain pointed out that Principia Mathematica was written in Latin, and therefore Latin is the true language, or whatever. Details.
I'm just reading here. Apparently it was ancient Indian mathematicians between the 1st and 4th century the base 10. That's our system is officially known as the Hindu Arabic numeral system. So not only do you have to believe in Allah, you have to believe in Brahma as well. Sorry.
Yay. I love Brahmic numerals. Is 0 what happens when Brahma wakes up?
Maybe.
Maybe. Maybe.
In some cases, and certainly in the humanities, but it doesn't mean to say it's true.
Of course not.
No, so you don't.
But what's the point you're making then if you're not saying that shows that it's true? John?
The point is it doesn't show it's false. And your little comment there was they all believed in God in those days is also false, because it's very interesting when you think of the rise of modern science in Western Europe. I've mentioned that. But it was Richard Dawkins put this to me years ago in one of our debates, and I made the point which I now make. Everybody didn't believe in God in those days. The Chinese didn't. And there was very interesting research done by Joseph Needham in Cambridge. He was a brilliant sinologist, also a chemist, I believe. And he did research and wrote the huge volume, many volumes of the Dictionary of Technological Achievements in China. And he was very puzzled why abstract science of the kind we know did not arise in China. Now, he was a neo-Marxist.
Oh, I can probably answer that. There is a hypothesis. I'm not sure if it is accepted, but there's definitely, I've seen something on, it is because of wine.
We got drunk and thought of weird shit?
No. So if you think about sort of wine and drinking wine, it's that people wanted to be able to see the color of the wine in a glass. Mm-hmm. So it led us in the direction of optics, grinding glass.
Okay. Yeah.
Whereas China didn't use glass. They knew of glass, but they didn't use it in the same way that the West did. They didn't make it into fine glasses to be able to see the color of wine, kind of thing. So there is a hypothesis that it is entirely due to the aristocracy of the West wanting to see the color of wine, whereas alcohol in the East was mostly colorless, kind of thing, that we developed optical systems, and that led to the telescope, to the microscope, to all of these different things that uses optical refinement in order to do stuff. I mean, think about how much in science uses glass, right? Because it's absolutely neutral. It's acid resistant. It doesn't conduct electricity. There's so much about it that's very, very useful. Like, so all the beakers, all the stuff, like glass is fantastic. But the reason why the West came in so heavily involved with glass is because of wine.
Okay. Yeah, that's. I mean, it's a partial explanation, and other stuff has to factor in. But yeah, like I'm familiar with the reason we started getting really, really good at extracting mercury from ores was also for glass making. So you know, part of our metallurgy and part of our chemistry also derives from that. So yeah, all these things, they intertwine with each other.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, but don't forget that, like, China made amazing, like, we still use and have on record, like, ancient Chinese astronomy, do apologize, astronomy, that we refer to today because they were so accurate in recording how the stars were. Like, it's just incredible.
Yeah, even without telescopes. I mean, you don't need a telescope to measure precision angles. You just need a very accurate sextant, but still.
Yeah. And I mean, look, the Chinese invented basically what a black powder, gunpowder, essentially. They used it for fireworks. Like, they actually invented that. It took the Western man, how do we weaponize this stuff? I mean, they did kind of weaponize it a little bit, but, really, yeah, combined with metallurgy, it became ridiculously weaponized.
Mm-hmm. But it's, I mean, the basic discoveries that underlie every advanced discovery have been made by multiple cultures in multiple places across the years.
Yeah.
It's just the combinations that result in the emergent properties. Like, everybody's had glass, but it was the glass plus the wine that led to the clear glass thing, sort of thing. It's interesting. Jester is testing us somehow.
Yes, there will be a test, Jester. There is a pop quiz at the end, so make sure you have studied extensively. There will be a pop test.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. We're definitely not going to finish this today, but I don't know why the hell the numerals shrank on me. Okay, I can make them bigger again.
Yeah, I don't mind calling it. He's frustrating the crap out of me, I must admit. Like, frustrating the crap out of me. Just not because his arguments are bad. That was going to happen anyway, but because the moderator is allowing him this insane amount of leeway. And it is a little frustrating. I don't blame Atkins, but he isn't sort of, he's not getting at the meat of his argument. And he's just sort of, like, it's not entirely his fault, because he's saying that's nonsense and goes to continue. And it's like, oh, but he's got to respond to that. It's like, what? Like, are you serious? He talked for 2 minutes straight without interruption. And now he says that's nonsense, goes to continue. And he's like, no, we got to go back to him now. What?
Yeah, I feel like Peter is just given up at this point. He's just trying to throw in quips.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I think so.
Oh, yeah. Goodness. So yeah, it has been frustrating so far, but we have had a couple of good laughs and
that's true.
Discovered some interesting things. So it's frustrating, but I still think it's, even this one is worth doing.
Like, so, I just, some of his analogies are not just bad, they are bottom tier. Like, if you're making an analogy, the two things have to be comparable. And the way that he's sort of saying, natural law is like the law of London. I mean, seriously? They are not comparable in any way, shape, or form. Like, it just, no, that's a terrible one. And some of the analogies making have been horrible. Just horrible.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty special. Asterisk. It's not politically correct to say, but pretty special. Yeah, so we as always, part 2 will be over at Mark's Place. Make sure you're subscribed over at Mark's as well. However, my minor note, as many of you know who've been around for a little while, every summer I produce a Comic-Con here in New York State. And that is next weekend. So we're going to be off next week, and Mark may still do something anyway, which is another good reason to subscribe over there. But we're gonna hop a week, and then we'll be at Mark's.
Yeah,
I hope it's only 1 week. I do have another IRL event the following Saturday. I should be done and home in time for it. We'll see. But probably it'll probably be.
It's not a problem. I've stood you up so much, Ember, when I have a debate on, so I really don't mind, honestly. It's only fair. It's 100% fair. I totally get you. Not a problem in the slightest. Not a problem.
As Jester says, everyone should like, subscribe, and if you can, consider joining the Patreon, because as much as I appreciate everybody's support on YouTube, and I really, really, really do, YouTube takes a huge chunk. Patreon takes a tiny little bit, so it helps a lot more. $1 goes further if you put it on the Patreon. So, and patron supporters get in the credits, like, because so much more makes it from the Patreon. Like, any level of support on Patreon, I get about as much as I get from the top level members here on YouTube. So it really, really helps. So if you want to be in the credits, that's another good way to do that. But however you support, even if it's just the free stuff, Hit the
Yeah,
share
even
button,
just
hit the like button, leave a comment, tell me my hat looks silly, whatever. Like anything you can do, it does help, and I very much appreciate
it
it.
doesn't look as silly as my hat that I wore last week. I will grant you that. But yeah, even just coming along to the chat, interacting, having a laugh with us, that appreciate it really a lot.
Hell yeah. Alrighty, folks. Yes, and there's Mark's channel. It's also linked in the description. I copy and paste the descriptions every time, and then I change the top text. So Mark is always in the description. So yes. But still, make sure you're subscribed on both channels. We'll be back at it again soon
In a couple of
after
weeks.
it. Yes.
Slight hiatus, ever so slight hiatus. Slight.
That's
Slight.
right. That's right.
Mm.
And oh goodness, I can't even remember what normally goes. My poor brain is so frazzled, folks. It has been a time recently, but thank you all so much for joining us. We'll see you again very, very soon. Until then, try not to die. Mwah. Thanks to all our patrons and top-level members for May, Miranda, Karen Butcher, Jimmy Tux, Ian Chen, Maya Adkison, Robin Webster, Lilith, Ember Lynn, The Barely Bearable Atheist, Eric Wander, Jason Jacoby, Lil of All Trades, Deviant Outcast, Thriver Scapegoat, Katie Bluebird, Noise Ending, The Godless Engineer, Secular Feelinist, and Illyra the Free. And you can add your name here next month by signing up at patreon.com/betterthanember or by joining Emberships here on YouTube at the Cinder level, which also includes all the custom emojis, tons of member-exclusive content, member-only live streams, and a bunch of other stuff. I deeply appreciate all the supporters who keep this channel going. Thank you so much. Because of you, we're building a wonderful community that I'm very proud of.